Hello again, everyone, and I bid you a hearty welcome on this holiday weekend. The clash at the castle wasn't nearly as violent as the finger pointing going on Who Killed WCW this week. We're going to talk about both of those things and more on the Father's Day edition of the Jim Cornette Experience. Oh, joy, oh, bliss. And joining me, Hawaiian Brian, the podcasting lion, the king of the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network, Mr. Co-host to you, the poop deck pappy of the podcasting industry, the great Brian Last, everybody.
Aloha, Jim. A pleasure to be here once again for another fun episode here. Poop deck pappy, and I guess that makes you, the blimp?
Hey, it. I may not be Olive Oil, I'm the star of the show here. I can be Popeye. I am what I am, and that's all that I am. And I've got all that I can stands that I can't stands no more. That one's appropriate. But we can talk about Poop Deck here in a second, but I just want to mention it is Father's Day that we are recording this. And a lot of people out there are going to, I love the cult of Cornette, but some days I just wish, it's a big chunk of the day here. But some people out there, yeah.
I know how you feel.
Some people out there are going to say, well, why don't you record on a day other than a holiday? Because we do all or part of one of these various programs that are on the YouTube channel and the podcasting networks and platforms, and we're picked up on the fillings in people's teeth in some states. We do one of these things or part of it every day or two. So there's really no way to avoid sitting down here, you and I, when other people are enjoying their holiday. But you had just mentioned, before we get into the Father's Day business, because at least this will lift us up a little bit.
What people don't know is off air, before we get on air, I get you in the mood by playing you some music. We do some sing-alongs.
That's why I'm always so grumpy, is because you're playing me the music on your organ, which now I've come to find out is on your left side.
My organ's on my left side, but it's like a music hall in here.
It could be, medical science is working miracles. It could be fucking fixed for you. What hump? But nevertheless, you're a poop deck pappy you're a Popeye collector. And you'd said to me right before we started recording, not one, but two, not one, but poop.
This is a great example of Popeye's English here.
Not one.
Yeah,
not
what's going
one,
on over here?
but two poop deck pappy action figures in your office there right now.
Presently, yes.
How'd you come to have two of them?
Well, one's from a toy line that came out like in 2000, and one's from one that's active right now. There's a toy company, Boss Fight Studios. They put out the first line of Popeye toys that are like true to the comic strip and the early cartoons more than, the Popeye versus Brutus as opposed to Popeye versus Bluto, I guess.
More of the original Seeger.
More Fleischer Studios and EC Cigar, less famous studios.
Yeah, well, you say cigar, I say Seeger.
That's right. You say Mariah, I say Maria.
Because it's spelled like Bob instead of fucking have one.
But it's one of those names that you never saw him interviewed or anything, obviously. It was a long time ago.
No.
So you only read the name and you find your own pronunciations and you kind of go with it. I do that with all sorts of things.
He was big in vaudeville, I understand.
Wow.
Yeah, back in those days. That's why they call them footlights, because they had fucking lights at your feet. They could see. They were the limelight. They burned lime in the days before electricity.
For those who don't know, Poop Deck Pappy, by the way, is Popeye's father.
Well, who doesn't know that?
Plenty of people. There's not like an active Popeye series right now. And it hasn't been for a while.
Well, there's not an active goddamn... I can't think of something that's plain common knowledge that's not active right now, but everybody knows who Poop Deck Pappy is.
Ava Gardner.
There you go. Everybody knows Ava Gardner. She's not right now.
She's not active now, but boy, was she active.
Boy, she was active back in the day, and people said good things about her activities. But anyway, speaking of activities, it is Father's Day, as I mentioned. And you have I've got Harley Quinn. Well, I've scared Harley Quinn off now. Where'd she go? She heard the sound of my voice and ran off. Harley Quinn was resting comfortably at my feet until I had to start talking to you. She's given me all kinds of puppy kisses for Father's Day. But you have actual human children you're burdened with. Do they do anything for you, or is it just the canines?
You know, the one thing for Father's Day I want more than anything else is just to sleep in and get some sleep. But of course, it's the day they're excited to wake you up early and tell you how much they love you.
How much they love you.
But no, they woke me up early. I got a bunch of cards. I got French toast. And my son woke up wanting to watch Godzilla Destroy All Monsters. And I DVR'd it when it was on Svengoolie a few weeks back to keep it because it has the English version of it, as opposed to you go to Apple, you get the Japanese version with English subtitles. So,
no.
Yeah, so for my kids to really enjoy, like they watch the Japanese versions more than the English versions of every one of the original Godzilla films.
Well, yeah, but to read that many subtitles, the kids are like, what the fuck is this, school? We just want to hear what they're saying. Why would Apple in America give you the Japanese language?
Well, the true to the original version, I guess. I'm not exactly sure the reason or, the studio.
Well, the original version of Godzilla that I saw had fucking Raymond Burr in it, and he wasn't speaking Japanese.
Right, that was my favorite episode of Perry Mason. Perry Mason versus the giant...
Yes, giant lizard. And I opened the door, and it was then I realized that was the Loch Ness Monster.
No, but Svengoolie had Destroy All Monsters, which is the coolest one, especially for kids, because it has all the different monsters fighting with each other and against each other. And then he had it on there, so I get to play it for them. I kept that on the DVR.
Do you think that's Tony Khan's favorite movie? Because all the monsters are just fighting each other and against and with each other and against each other, and everybody's just fighting.
No, his favorite movie is Destroy All Money.
Well, for my Father's Day, I'll have you know.
Yeah?
The plan might have, for a while there, was that Stacy was going to barbecue me some nice burgers. We'd sit in the backyard and enjoy sitting under the redbud tree or whatever. And it's about 100 fucking degrees today with high humidity. So that has become it instead. She is going to bring me home a take and bake Papa Murphy's pizza, my favorite, with sausage and bacon and onions and green peppers and extra cheese. And I'm going to cook that bad boy up, and I'm going to stuff my face with that inside in the air conditioning. And they're going to genuflect to me as father and king of the castle, Cornette, and master of the domain. And then tomorrow I'm going to go back to being a schlub out there with a goddamn hose in the yard at 7 o'clock in the morning. Now, do you...
Oh, poor you.
I planted these. No.
Working man Jim Cornette. Oh, my God.
Again, hey, I'm wearing boots. If you're wearing boots, you're working. I planted these trees on June the 3rd. It's June the 16th. It's rained one day for a few minutes. And now the weather forecast is 95 degrees every day and no fucking rain whatsoever.
Why do you need boots? You're in your own yard. It's not like you're spraying the hose on your feet. Why do you need boots?
Because I'm walking there. There's mole holes and there's fucking wild animals out there. I might need a kick in the head to protect myself.
It's hot out.
If a rabid raccoon comes after me.
All times of year, no matter what the weather is, you're going to wear your boots to go water the trees?
Yeah, I wear my boots to walk out that far in the yard. Yes, once I get away from the periphery, you never know what you're going to step in or what you're going to encounter. I could have, if I was wearing my flip-flops, I could have tripped over a box turtle just yesterday morning. And then he'd have snagged my fucking toe and I'd have got some kind of gangrene and my foot would have fallen off.
Oh my God, the video clip we would have done of that.
Well, see, but I avoided that because I had boots on. So my shell was as hard as his was, and I'm out there with that fucking hose.
Wait, did you kick the turtle?
No, I did. I could have tripped over him because I didn't see him. He was hiding in the grass, laying in wait for me, like a wolf in turtle's clothing.
But you compared your shell to his shell as if there was some kind of like you had an example that took place.
If he had started my way, I would have had to retaliate. But anyway, so every morning I gotta be out there for a fucking hour with these 15 fucking trees with the goddamn hose. I've got me a little folding chair that I drag from tree to tree so I can sit there instead of standing like an idiot. And you can't sprinkler these things. You're not supposed to spray the whole goddamn tree. It's just been planted. Did I mention the balls on it? where they plant the thing, the ball is on the bottom of the tree. It's as big as a giant pumpkin, and it sets in a hole in the ground, and then they put the mulch bed around it. But since it's only been a week, it's not like you have to sprinkle the ground around them. You've got to wet the balls. And that's where the roots then grow and regenerate and move into the soil. So I've got to wet each one of the tree's balls because it's important in hot weather to keep your balls wet. So I have to have the hose there. Are you here? Are you there?
I'm listening to you talk about your boots and your balls and whatever else is going on there at the Blue Oyster Bar. My boots and my wet balls. So I've got to take that fucking hose and I've got to just wet the balls underneath each tree. So, you know, it's some things, human labor cannot be replaced in some where are the Monroes?
Instances.
Speaking of human labor, where are the Monroes?
I said they're not over at my house every morning at 7 o'clock.
This should be their job, not yours.
They're not going to come over here just to spend an hour watering trees at 7 o'clock in the morning.
They've done worse. They've done worse.
Well, they've done a lot worse, but for more compensation, then I'm going to pay them to water the fucking trees. But now I can't do it in the evening time like I like at the end of a hard work day. Go out there and sit and pleasantly hold a hose on some trees while I reflect on the day's activities because it's so oppressively hot, you get a goddamn brain aneurysm. So I got to be out there fucking tromping around at 7 o'clock in the morning with my big long hose. But around in the middle of all of this, I'll have you know, the customers again at Cornette's Collectibles, if you missed the update that we did on the drive-through a couple of days ago, it's even better than I thought. The first 150 packages from our figure on sale of June the 1st have already been packed up in the hands of the Feather Bottoms. They're shipping this week, the week of Monday, June 17th, and we expect at this pace that the entire backlog of the action figures that have been purchased will be out by the week of July the 1st. We thank you for your patience if you have an order outstanding. And for the non-figure orders, there is no waiting. Send those on in because you don't have to get behind the line because of the incredible sorting system. Remember, the Feather Bottoms Ultra Careful Handling System gets them the products from JimCornette.com that they order in perfect condition because of the packaging, but it's the sorting ahead of time that gets them out efficiently. And that's basically sort stuff, heave it in the truck, the shit system. Sort, heave, in truck. So anyway, JimCornette.com for all of your merchandise needs. We got a long show today, so I won't be any more commercial than that.
Hey, what do you think's on CBS right now? The last couple of weeks.
Oh, are you going to do this again? Okay, Frey, it was bull riding.
That's right.
Then it was
calf roping.
And calf roping.
Don't forget that.
And then it was dirt racing somewhere in a community in Missouri with a population of 324, and it was on CBS television.
Midget sprint cars, sponsored by Toyota.
That's what it was. And ladies and gentlemen, it's a misleading title. The race car drivers are not midgets, apparently, which would have made it at least entertaining enough to me to reach the bar beyond CBS, but it's the cars that are smaller, hence the nom de plume of midgets, correct? Is that what we ascertained?
That is correct. They are midget cars by designation.
Well, what's on this week?
This week is the WNBA. Chicago at Indiana. The Indiana Fever versus the Chicago Bullet
Virus?
Holes. I don't know what exactly.
Blowholes? What?
I did not say that. That's what you're saying here. But
I thought that's what I heard you say.
I wonder what kind of ratings this will do. This is Caitlin Clark. She's that one big college basketball star is now in the WNBA. She's the biggest
I'm aware. Everybody is aware. I don't know how she got so famous, or did she score like 100 points in college, or she was just the greatest player ever? It just all of a sudden they said, the biggest star in women's basketball is signed in the WNBA.
I literally never heard of her until like the college basketball, with the Final Four for women, I guess. Until that like last game, I heard of her. And then it's been nonstop.
So do we know, has she been like
But she's good.
excellent all along, or she just burst into prominence?
I can't tell you because I don't watch the WNBA or follow women's basketball. I'm watching.
Well, if you told me, we'd both know. But
well, she just got an
the
assist.
thing is,
she just got an assist. There you go.
Who helped her?
Someone else with very colorful. I don't know who any of these people are. I'm just watching people running around because
Was she broken down on the side of the road? She called for roadside assistance. She got an assist.
What do you think, though, the fact that they say that her joining the NBA, I saw a statistic the other day. I don't know if you would have seen it because I don't know if it was a Twitter or where, but
I'm pretty sure I did.
Games with her like drawing double what everyone else is drawing in the league. Maybe even more than
yes. They've said this on the news, but that's why I'm asking. That's what I'm asking you, Costello. What? How did everybody in the world hear of this person? And we just heard about this 3 weeks ago whenever they debuted her, that she's a superstar and all these. How have we overlooked this? Or what is it the fault of the news media at large, or what the fuck has she done suddenly to get so over? I'm asking this in all good faith.
Well, she's also white. I think that's a big part of it, to be quite honest with you.
Well, so am I.
Right, but you don't play basketball. If Jim Cornette, if a white guy with glasses all of a sudden was the best in the league, I think everyone would be paying attention. Like, who the hell is this guy?
I tell you what, I could hit a heck of a fucking 3-point shot if you give me a second to get set and let me use both hands and nobody's running at me.
It was an example. It was a ridiculous example. You're not going to be the best in the league no matter what.
Well,
not if you have time to set for your 3-point shot.
You know what? On Father's Day, what kind of fucking parent are you that has such... Well, you don't talk to children like that about achieving their dreams. You tell them, no, you can do anything you set your mind to.
Is it your dream to hit a 3-point shot? It's your dream to hit a 3-point shot that, as you said, you'd have plenty of time to prepare and stand there and catch your breath.
Well, no, you said you just squashed my hopes and my future, my potential, that you say you'll never be the best player in the game. How do you know I might not set my mind to it? You're underestimating me. Right. But anyway, the point is...
According to Wikipedia, she's considered a generational talent. She's described as one of the greatest women's college basketball players of all time by many publications.
Okay.
Rebecca Lobo, ESPN analyst.
Oh, ESPN. God damn it. No, that needs to be a girl on the AEW roster.
Rebecca Lobo, a former basketball player, ESPN analyst, said that she's the best offensive women's college player.
She's the most offensive player we've ever seen.
Since someone else I've never heard of, in part due to her unprecedented shooting range and proficiency amongst female players, Clark has been labeled a transformative player in women's basketball. Yeah, she's the only one who can get more than 4,000 people into the building. That's what that means.
Well, then good for her. And good for her and her whole team, whoever she's playing for. Who was that again? Is she in Indiana or Chicago?
She is, that's a great question. She's a big star.
She's not too far up the road from me if she's in Indiana.
She's from Des Moines, Iowa, AEW country.
Well, I don't care where she's from.
Indiana Fever, the Indiana Fever.
There you go. Well, she's 100 miles up the road, right? I ought to go up and see her. Maybe do an interview for the show.
The Indiana Fever was something that Dick the Bruiser got one time, I understand, at a small show.
Yes, it was a spot show, and afterwards he went to Dr. Feelgood and got a shot for it. But now the thing, back to the CBS at noon, it was kind of ridiculous. We were talking about that this racing from a dirt track in the middle of a field in Missouri could get on network television and wrestling couldn't. But this is more something you would expect to see on network television, is the big star in the WNBA playing a game. I can buy that.
Let me ask you this, because there are people who think that some of these shows are time buys. Although if you look at some of their press releases, it certainly doesn't indicate that, but that doesn't mean anything. It's a press release. Is it worth it for, let's say, a Tony Khan, whether his product is good or bad right now, just in terms of exposure? Do you think, because everyone's looking past broadcast TV, everyone's looking past network TV to streaming. in 2024, do you still think it would be worth it if it was a time buy for an AEW or a wrestling company that size to get every week noon on a CBS or an NBC or something like that? If these preachers are buying this time, and Tony Khan has shown money is no object. Money, he will fly everyone to the show in a Lear jet. Like that's a big deal anymore. That's the point. Is it worth it, do you think? We're all talking about the cable deal and potential streaming deals. You forget that a lot of the country may still be watching broadcast TV.
Yes, like me. Because it's easier. Because it's simple. And it's got a nice little guide where everything is. You know, where they bundled up all the television stations together and called it cable. So you can go to all the television stations at the same time. But the streaming, they're bombarding you with shit. Looks like fucking raindrops with every fucking program in the world. Everything looks different, works differently. Fuck all that. If I want to work that hard, I'll goddamn do more of this. But nevertheless, you asked a question. I think it's more of the standards of television ratings have fallen as we made that, you know, that now it's even network television. A couple million people's a big deal, for fuck's sake. That used to be in the middle of the night, the audience watching Tom Snyder on the Tomorrow Show on NBC at 2 o'clock in the morning in the old days. So I don't know if they were to let you buy noon on Sunday with Tony's ratings on cable, but good cable stations on other days at other times, that it would be worth any money, because I still don't think people would fucking watch it. If you had a product that had very little exposure or minimal, or, you know, not on one of the major cable stations, and you got a chance at a sweet deal, because I guess the networks are happy with 500,000 people these days. If you could secure a slot that was at least fucking 11 a.m. or noon for an hour or two, and on your smaller platform build a CBS special that you had something boffo in mind for, to expose a new talent, or you've got this guy that if anybody could just see him, and this match idea, whatever the fuck, and promote your own network special, because they'll let you buy the time, but they don't have to say that publicly, then that might be newsworthy or attention getting for a smaller promotion. But Tony's already got a big enough fucking time television show that not a lot of people are watching, that I don't think it would make any difference.
Well,
am I just talking out of my ass there?
No, I mean, it's an interesting thing. I was trying to find it because I saw a press release the other day for one of these events we've seen on a Sunday, and it may have even been one that has been airing on Sunday before we started watching, where it said they get 1 million viewers for noon on a Sunday for one of these things. There's no guarantee wrestling will get more or less, obviously, but they're saying 1 million. And, you know, for a company like AEW...
But is this Nielsen or is this their press release?
It was a press release. They get, okay. Exactly. But when it comes to AEW and some of the problems they've actually had that they have not found solutions to, specifically with local promotion and drawing in markets for their TV shows, maybe local TV, something would help. I don't think it's a local version of Dynamite or Collision. I think it probably has to be a different kind of themed show to fit in with the other things that are airing here.
If it's a network program, that it's not a local show. It's shown on the local stations, but you can't customize. So you don't really... You're still diluted in that, yes,
you still have to buy
not diluted,
locally,
but diluted. You would still have to put commercials in the local station that the show was airing on if you were running in that market.
Local promos.
But at the same time, then you're having to buy those too. And then again, if it's a one-time thing, a local broadcast does you no good at all. If you've got some kind of platform and you can lead to a network special, you've got something. But if you've got no television or platform or whatever, and you get local broadcast, but it's 1 week thing, you have no time to build an audience. Except if you're a dirt racer, because apparently they're all over the place.
Well, you know what I don't know anything about, because wrestling has kind of let it go by. I mean, Dave Marquez probably knows a lot about it, but just what's up with the world of syndication nowadays? And what opportunities would be there, again, for a well-funded wrestling promotion who could try to do some different things locally? What is the syndicated or the syndication market right now, if any, for wrestling?
Well, I don't know. I don't know everything. And like you said, Dave probably does know better than most people. But at the same time, I know enough to know that it's easier to get on some form of television than it ever has been before, because now even the local stations have the secondary channels that, you know, like WLKY #2, which is Me TV or Antenna TV. So each local station has about 2 or 3 other stations, and you can get it if you've got cable, which now so many people do. But it's so you can get on, but then the audience has been diluted, and it's harder for those secondary channels to mean anything as far as drawing live houses in a particular market, but you can put enough of them together to either entice a regional or national sponsor, as Dave has done. And, you know, so you're doing the television show and syndicating it, but it can never, syndication for wrestling can't ever happen again where it would be a difference maker across the country, because you can't get on the primary stations anymore unless you're either buying time or some major goddamn company decides they're going to syndicate you. And that has not happened in a long time, because the wrestling companies are too wrapped up in rights fees and cable and streaming and blah, 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 Netflix, whatever all these words are, words and phrases.
Yeah, real quick, I'll just mention this. I'm looking this up. PBR, that's the Professional Bull Riders Association, I believe. This is their press release from when they announced their deal with CBS Sports for the 2024 season. They will broadcast approximately 70 hours worth of coverage throughout the season, including 20 hours of live coverage. So if it's live, it's not a buy if it's live, right?
Well, I wouldn't think it would. I wouldn't think that they would buy, you know, the bull riding people would buy the time anyway, but I wouldn't think that would be a time buy, a live special. I mean, anything can happen.
All right, well, we'll stay on top of this story, and if wrestling ends up on network TV, we'll take all the credit for it.
Whatever, stay on top of it. I don't know if we've been on top of it about as long as those guys have been riding those bulls.
I saw a video the other day someone sent me of some guy in Mexico. I think it was Mexico. They said, you got to see this guy. No shirt on, looks like he's bombed. Just has a cigarette hanging out of his mouth like he's the Sandman. Jumps on this bull and rides this thing like nothing's bothering him. And he's getting thrown around. He's got the cigarette in his mouth the whole time. Badass. That's what should be on TV. I'd watch that.
Well, that would lead people to... The kids would take up smoking again. Guys, they got the Marlboro Man in there. He rode the bull. He's used to it. And one more thing I was going to mention about syndication I was going to mention is that the reason why the deal with Ring of Honor and Sinclair Broadcasting looked good and actually was good and could have been better and quickly dovetailed, that was the way to get on the primary stations in town, the local broadcast stations. The program wasn't relegated to WDRB.3 or whatever. It was on the main Fox affiliate or the local ABC affiliate or whatever the local affiliate was. And the theory was, as they picked up stations, which when the sale went through, I think they had 60 stations. And I heard before they got in financial trouble here recently, and good for them, the right-wing fucking lunatics, we found out they are. They had 120 or 30 stations or something like that. That would have been the basis for your national syndication and charging national ad rates. Remember back in the 80s when Vince and Crockett were dueling it out in that realm, it was you had to get 80% of the country, I believe, to be able to sell commercial time on your syndicated network and charge the national ad rates. And that's what they were always fighting over. With Sinclair, that was the theory that because they owned the programming and they were going to be able to broadcast it on an ever-increasing number of stations that were the stations in these towns that people watched for their local news and for their network evening programming and shit, which would have been viable had Greg the office boy not come along, piss everybody off. But nevertheless, so that's and nobody's going to do that again, because who's going to own that? Sinclair doesn't even own that many stations anymore, unless one of the networks themselves decided to buy or get into a wrestling promotion. You can't have true either national network TV, but on local stations really again.
All right.
Oh, this is my show, isn't it? That's well, and the CW, I'm sorry, CW is going to have, which show are they getting? They're getting NXT.
NXT.
The least likely of the ones to actually tour nationally or use local broadcast affiliates to sell tickets in live markets.
I mean, it's crazy to think about because it was always the staple, and it's still the thing that so many of us go back and watch and have great memories of things that were said and different people doing them. But localized promos are dead. I mean, even for pay-per-views in a lot of cases, promos are about people. They're never to actually sell people coming out or tuning in. And, you know, when you're having trouble drawing locally, it may be, I mean, again, you want to think outside the box. And sometimes by doing that, you go back to the things that worked in the past. There's got to be something in there in the middle, you know? There's got to be something that can be done.
In 2011 or whatever it was, when we started doing local promos in Ring of Honor for the Sinclair stations, and we had the guys come in a day early and come to the TV studio, they thought they were going to do like an interview or, you know, however many takes it takes to get this interview done or whatever. Or as no, we're doing local promos. They blew some of their minds. They were like, what the fuck is this? Yes, you're going to talk to goddamn Tampa or fucking Fayetteville or whatever. And what do you know about all these towns? And all of them, most of them do absolutely fucking nothing. Well, learn something.
You know, sometimes you'll see an ad for like AEW on Raw or something. Like you'll see an ad like, you know, for they're coming to Long Island. They're coming here or there. But it's always like some generic ad, the same way they used to make one. The circus is coming to town. See the ringleader, the lions. It's never, here I am with John Moxley. John, what are you going to do in Long Island? And Tony Khan's got money, and these guys got lots of time on their hands in between matches.
The baby faces need to know who the popular people are in town and how the sports teams are doing. And the heels need to know who's embarrassed themselves on a fucking local level and what the shithole neighborhoods are. And just go from there.
And buy some local ads on cable systems and
talk to them. Talk to them. But anyway.
Maybe I'll do that. Maybe you'll start seeing Cornette ads in the middle of Raw.
Well, what?
This show sucks, don't you think? If you think so too, hear me this week on the podcast.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I've got to be in on it first before you do that, because if it's Cornette ads, what is Cornette going to say?
Well, I'm going to get a Cornette puppet. He'll say whatever I, hey, listen to my show. It's great. Send money to Long Island.
I told you the last time you tried to stick your hand up my ass, that'd be the end of that.
I wasn't going to really do it.
Well, he could have fooled me.
I did the first time.
Say, well, I know. That's why you don't get fooled again. All right, should we talk about one of these wrestling programs?
We're having too much fun. Why? Why?
I'm trying to. The one thing I do want to talk about today was the one program that I really enjoyed over the last week or so was the biography they did on A&E of Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Because this one, it's one of the rare ones where the guy wasn't his own worst enemy, brought almost everything on himself, you know, at various points had all kinds of opportunities to straighten his shit up, and is remembered fondly as a great talent that fucked up everything. Steamboat, what a nice guy Ricky is, right? He really is. And everybody thinks well of him. And now he has a nice house and a nice wife and a couple of nice dogs. And he enjoys racing his, I don't know, are those midget cars? I think his track had pavement. But you know, he's one of the good guys. You wish that at certain points in his wrestling career, he had not confronted dipshits such as, you know, Jim Herd, and you might have got more of him. But, you know, just what a classy guy that he comes off telling his story, whatever the stories are. He's a very nice, classy individual. You don't hear people just shitting on, thankfully. So the ratings must have been horrible for this because he's such a good person. Nobody probably wanted to see it. Did you see this program?
I saw this program. I loved it. I thought it was great. I thought WWE did a really great job with it, other than the disgusting appearance of Bruce Pritchard later on to try to justify the awful gimmick they brought him back with. But other than that,
God, yeah.
I thought it was really good, and I think the two takeaways are that Ricky Steamboat's a really nice guy that you still root for, and the second takeaway is Bonnie Steamboat must own the rights to her name and likeness, or any mention of her, or anything, or threaten a suit about anything mentioning her at any time, because there was no mention at all about the wife, Bonnie Steamboat.
Well, but now think about this. Does anybody really want to think about her or mention her? Isn't it better that it's just all just left in the past? I want to bring up one thing I noted at the start when I'm watching, you know, because this was another one of those programs that was great for the old video. So if you didn't see it, you didn't bump the ratings up, go back and see it because they used a lot of old Carolinas footage and the really classic stuff. And a lot of people, obviously all the talking heads remarked about how talented Ricky was. And especially a lot of people talk about the way that Ricky sold. And then Ricky Morton is a paragon of selling. And I think I'm wondering which one is the more effective, because they're so unique and so diametrically opposite, but they both look so good. Where at Steamboat, it's like ballet. It's great. The pain on his face and the body language and the cringing, and it's emotional, but it's like a superhero. He's like a comic book superhero, especially when he's young, with that fucking physique. And whether on offense or defense, when he was selling, he just so graceful, and the arm drags and just everything. And you kind of see him like pow when he's selling like Superman on a comic book cover. Whereas Ricky Morton was almost the antithesis. He was far from a superhero. He was the underdog, the mortal guy, the plain. Look at that cute boy. It was raw. It was visceral. When he would take those violent bumps and snap around. And I think they're both almost classic in their own way in wrestling, is that if a babyface doesn't do something that leans toward one, he does something that leans toward the other, but nobody has done it as good. Does that make any sense?
Makes lots of sense.
And I just, I love that about Ricky was able to pick that up. And I think that's why, can you ever imagine him having been a heel? Except when Bonnie came to the ring with him in WCW.
I once heard him say that his thing was he sold to the back of the room.
Yes. Because you have to project and they can't see your face. Remember, I've said that about the reason why that Jerry Lawler, dominated the Mid-South Coliseum is a big building, is 11,000 seats, but his body language fit his facial expression. If you were in the cheap seats behind him, you could tell whether he was mad, shocked, hurt, whatever. And Steamboat's the same way. It's the body language. And, and just the athleticism. In high school, he already looked like a star. In the pictures, he's a good-looking guy with a look in a group of nerds, right? And because they said his father was in the army and his mother was Japanese, so their individual parents didn't agree on their marriage. It was a mixed marriage back in the World War II days. And he talked about how he had lived all over the world with his dad in the army, but experienced racism from kids and adults. But again, he's the best looking fucking guy in the fucking school, right? And then he said he worked at his father's gas station to save money to buy a car. So he was already a fucking wonderful standout moral character when he's a fucking teenager. And with him, kind of doing that, his girlfriend worked with Vern Gagne's daughter, Donna, and said, hey, my boyfriend ought to be a fucking wrestler, whatever. And somehow he ends up training with Kaz at the barn in Minnesota. So that's, just an amazing series of events that could happen like that. And you would, again, anybody else, we see what has happened to some of the other people that came through Vern's camp, but Ricky never cracked up. He was always a steady person. He's, spends a few months there and then gets to go to Florida and work for Eddie Graham. Holy shit.
Home. That's where he's from, Florida. Home.
Yes. And to work for Eddie Graham, who changes his name to Steamboat in honor of Sam Steamboat, who was one of the biggest star baby faces in the history of Florida wrestling. So he comes in as the nephew of Sam Steamboat in Florida, and the people loved him.
Wish they would have had some pictures of Sam Steamboat in his prime as opposed to like one video clip of him at the very end of his career, maybe in Hawaii or something.
Yeah, but the Steamboat footage is hard to come by these days, though. But now this is the shame of it all, Brian. Can you imagine if Vince McMahon had heard about this new young wrestler named Dick Blood? See right there.
Well, listen, wrestling had two chances because for whatever reason, when Tito Santana broke in, his first name was Dick Blood, Richard Blood.
Well, no, but they called him Richard Blood.
Yeah.
But, and that was, Ricky Steamboat, I guess we should say Ricky Steamboat's name is Richard Blood originally. But when they did his promo pictures, they put Dick Blood. I'm like, I can't imagine being labeled with that fucking name. Oh, my God. So Steamboat worked perfectly. And that's the thing. Steamboats are on the Mississippi down south in Louisiana. And Sam Steamboat was from Hawaii. I don't honestly know how he got the name Steamboat. Do you? Because it's not really it's not Japanese. Do they have steamboats over in Japan?
I don't know the history of the Steamboat name or the steamboats in Japan. But
it looks like he's a steamboat more than a Blood. Ricky, I mean.
Yeah, I've never met anyone with the last name Blood in my entire life.
Anyway.
His brother is Vic Blood. I mean, just...
Well, yes, Vic Blood, Dick Blood, and Rick Blood, right? Moving along to the Carolinas, you know, and I remember getting results. This was before that I could see the Georgia TV on, because we had no cable up here in like 76, but I remember the results of, you know, Ricky Steamboat and whatever. And apparently Flair had seen him, you know, down there at those tapings and sold him to Jimmy Crockett. And boy, when they brought him in, especially those, you know, early 77, 78, 79, has there ever been a better looking baby face in fucking wrestling? Just the body and the hair and the feet. He looked like if Bruce Lee was actually a grown man instead of 140 pounds.
And you're a Bruce Lee fan insulting him, so that says something. What do you think?
Well, yes, because that was the thing. It was the appeal he had. This is just 2 or 3 years after Bruce Lee died, and he'd been the biggest thing. And here comes this guy who looks even better and is 100 pounds bigger and has that body and is doing, oh my God, it was insane. What were you going to say?
I was going to say something. You said something that triggered something, and then you decided to insult Bruce Lee. So now I don't remember what I was going to say.
He was the best looking babyface in wrestling, is what I'd said. With the physique and the look and the hair and the thing and the blah, blah, blah. And then that's when...
Oh, that's what I was going to ask.
Oh.
What do you think when you hear that? Knowing Ric Flair recommended him and it led to a legendary feud and matches that people still talk about. Same thing happened with you, right? Ric Flair saw you guys in Mid-South and immediately recommended you to Jim Crockett.
Well, yes, but it wasn't the same thing because then I didn't have a legendary feud with him and he never would put me over.
Good point.
Yeah, see, but no, that's it. Flair was a talent scout for Crockett and a representative of the territory because it was the place to go most of the period of time from in the NWA from what, 76 through 87. But anyway, you know, and he saw that, you know, I can work with this guy. My God, can you? Because it's not hard to figure that out. And, you know, that's in the Carolinas. Now Ricky had only, think about this, he only had like fucking 3 years maybe experience from the start. But that's why the old footage, you can tell on the interviews, he was so soft-spoken and he was still unsure of himself there, but you'd get in the ring and he had the facials and the fire. And he was a natural. And
by the way, that was the only time Bonnie appeared in the documentary, the clip of her.
Yes.
When Flair and Steamboat had the confrontation in the studio, she was one of the women on Flair's arm.
And now, wait a minute. Now, and Beth, Rick's wife, was involved in, but was that a different angle?
I think that was a different angle because I'm pretty sure that was Bonnie in that angle.
Yes. Well, no, but she was boy, if you were a woman that got into an angle on a wrestling show back in those days, you had a pretty good percentage. Ricky told the story about his father trying to hit the ring with a chair on Ernie Ladd.
Oh my God, that was such a good story.
And the thing is, he had told his parents, now I'm going to be okay, I'm going to be all right. But people in those days, not only weren't they as well versed as everybody is today in the inner workings of how wrestling worked, but the young guys weren't going to just sit down with their parents who are going to one show for fucking hours and try to explain this shit. So they just try to reassure them, okay, you know. And his father tried to fucking take a chair in the ring at Ernie Ladd, which a lot of people, I think today would probably, oh yeah, bullshit, he's telling that story. Remember, we've talked about it before, and there's newspaper clippings and reports of it, that when Danny Hodge started wrestling out of the amateurs and in amateur boxing, in his first 6 months in the business, they had him against Angelo Savoldi, right, for the World Junior Heavyweight title. And fucking Hodge's father jumped up on the apron and stabbed or cut Savoldi for what was it, 80 something, 90 something stitches? Do you remember the number of stitches,
I don't
Brian?
remember the number of stitches, but I've heard the story, and it's not. I mean, for anyone doubting it, it's not an outrageous thing, the idea of anyone hitting the ring or an old person hitting the ring, but specifically a family member that was never smartened up, because that was never done. And in this case, he tried to smarten him up, didn't he, in his own way?
Well, yes, he had tried to again to reassure him, I'm going to be all right, Pop, no matter what happens, blah 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 or whatever. But the guy got seeing this heel maul his son. The guy got fucking overwhelmed, but he fucking stabbed him. Anyway, so then the Steamboat biography goes into the angles and that was the perfect thing where Flair, they were diametric opposites. Like remember we talk about this is what draws money, Austin and McMahon, Flair and Dusty. The Nature Boy versus the Common Man. This was the Nature Boy versus the fucking, Wonder Boy. He was so wholesome and beloved by everybody. So what are you going to do? You're going to mess his face up. And he rubbed Steamboat's face on the goddamn concrete, and then they sandpapered it. Keith Greenberg was getting on my nerves here at this point. It was unnecessary to stick him in because they had people telling the story that are actually in the business. But Harley didn't cut him. They sandpapered him. And truthfully, I always thought it was fucking Gene Anderson.
Well, Phil, let's just say what he said. He said that he got cut by Harley Race and then sandpapered.
Yes.
Yeah. So that it almost infected the cut in a way.
No, you don't fucking gig somebody before you're going to sandpaper them. That's just insane. But again, did Gene sandpaper somebody else? And this was Harley. Am I mixing my metaphors?
I'm not sure, because I could think of a few different people with that sandpapered eye look over the years.
Steamboat said it was Harley anyway, so I'll believe him. Boy, I tell you what, goddamn, that's what they used to do sometimes with burns also. Where they would say if they burned the guy's chest, they'd sandpaper it a little bit and then put the iodine on it. Oh gosh, it looked terrible. But you
didn't have to do it for Ronnie Garvin.
No, because he got singed a bit. But I mean, the sandpaper would be worse. But the Iranian assassin, the Cuban assassin. When it was the Cuban and Iranian assassin tag team, it was Cuban assassin's son, I believe. Which one was it? Anyway, point is, it was Angel the Cuban, because that was so many years ago.
Angel the Cuban.
Angel Acevedo was the Cuban assassin. He poured lighter fluid on his chest and set that on fire when he got burned with a fireball, so it'd show good on TV. But that was a little extreme. But anyway, that's this angle. When they did this to Steamboat and it disfigured his face, and it took, as Flair said, months for the pigment to come back. And not only did this get Steamboat over to Carolinas and propel him into the main event with Flair, but everybody wanted, when VHS came in, I think there was originally one person that had this, because this was 1977, 78. And when VHS came in on a more regular basis, you would get 47th generation copies of these because everybody wanted to see that. And then the polar opposites. Steamboat does the angle where he rips Flair's clothes off, his custom-made suit down to his skivvies, and punctures his ego, deflates his pomposity. That's where you get a babyface over a top heel. He didn't hospitalize him and put an end to the issue. He humiliated him and made everybody laugh at him. And people saw that as more of a mortal insult to Flair. And that got Steamboat over, because you could get over a top guy like that. And then they had the fucking matches, which were, in state of the art. That was the gold standard anytime they got in the ring. But there's never. Oh, and did you see one of the clips? Roughhouse Fargo, Sonny Fargo, was on Mid Atlantic Television. He was a referee over there, raising Ricky Steamboat's hand after he won a match. Can you think of two more opposite babyface attractions in the history of wrestling? They're Roughhouse Fargo and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
See, I would have loved to have seen a guy like Steamboat brought to Memphis to sit in the crowd and just see Roughhouse Fargo after working with him as referee Sonny Fargo for a while. Oh, you have no idea? Here's how over he is here, and just let him run.
Oh,
wild.
yeah. Well, that's what when me and Bobby and Dennis showed up in the Carolinas, Roughhouse was still refereeing for about another year or so. I got to ride with him a couple times. But we would our eyes would brighten up when he came in. We'd talk to him more, and the other guys who had never been there, like, what the fuck? You don't understand. Just book him in Memphis; it'll sell out. Just put his name on the card. He doesn't even need to do an interview because he doesn't. And they're standing there looking at us like we got turds hanging out of our mouth. Anyway, then they covered the Steamboat and Youngblood team, and boy, the emotional part where Ricky got over in All Japan working for Baba, and then Baba made an announcement on television and helped his mother find her family after all those years that they had been estranged. I'd never heard that before, and that was very cool. And he was crying talking about it.
I never heard that story. It's an amazing story. And when you really think about it, in the early 80s, and a lot of guys, you and me, we have a lot of those Japanese magazines from that era. Steamboat was in those magazines, and he came over to All Japan, but you never think of him as being like one of the regulars like everyone else. You have to wonder how things could have maybe been different if he didn't go to the WWF, because you have to think Baba would have wanted Steamboat as much as he could have gotten him.
Oh, yeah. I think he would have been one of the top. And see, I can't say foreign attraction, because since he was half Japanese, he could have been made there. If he'd have wanted to just work probably All Japan and have the rest of the time off, I think. I can't see him, because he could work with anybody they brought in. They brought in the best talent from the NWA. The Funks were Baba's bookers then.
They never had a top babyface sell like Ricky Steamboat, so it would have been very interesting to see how it would have affected things.
But, I think if he hadn't, and honestly, I don't think he wanted to probably, because he is, and always has been a family guy and, wanted to be gone 26 weeks a year, whatever. But I think if he hadn't done the WWF, that would have been, because that's the thing, is that was right about that time. That's when he finished up in Charlotte, because Dusty came in. We've talked about this before. He knew Ricky'd been there for 7 years, and Dusty wanted to go with Barry Windham as his top young baby face. He was going to be the guy, Dusty, but he wanted Windham, and later on that turned into Magnum when Barry took off. But Ricky didn't fit, and that's when, he basically went to the WWF and the Dragon, and they fleshed it out a little bit. I'd forgotten about those martial arts videos he did.
Oh, yeah. How could you forget those?
Well, because, I'm so... Not only was I seeing him on the Carolinas tapes, but then also that trilogy with Flair and that run there. I've concentrated on that. I forgot about me in the WWF. But again, looked like a 230-pound Bruce Lee and can carry the martial arts gimmick off and looked the part. And then, again, let me ask you this. Discuss this, as they say. A lot of people say that the Flair or the Steamboat Randy Savage match at WrestleMania 3 is the best match of all time, right? People have said that. I'm not saying just pulling something out of my ass.
They don't say it as often now, but it was said a lot throughout the years, and some people still do say it.
Yes. Yeah. Well, but I mean, a lot of people said it for a while, right? People say all kind of stupid things now.
At a minimum, people for a long time said it was the best WWF match of all time.
Okay. And a lot of people, for the same period of time or whatever, said that Flair and Steamboat especially the 89 matches were the best matches I ever had, right?
Right.
Yes. And what is the common denominator?
Dave Hebner. No, the common
God damn
denominator
it.
is Ricky Steamboat.
Because think about this. I like Ricky Steamboat versus Ric Flair, especially number 1 and number 3 from 1989, better than I like Ricky Steamboat Savage from WrestleMania 3, right? That's my statement. And at the same time, I can see where people would like Savage and Steamboat at WrestleMania 3. But did you ever see Ric Flair versus Randy Savage?
Yes.
Was it nearly as good as Ric Flair versus Steamboat or Steamboat versus Savage?
It wasn't as good as either of those, but I actually thought Flair and Savage WrestleMania 8, I thought was a really good match.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying, well, of course it's going to be really good, but that's what I'm saying. If Flair and Savage were the bigger stars, but Flair versus Savage was not as good, in my opinion, as either Savage versus Steamboat or Steamboat versus Flair.
Right, because both those guys had the best in-ring working babyface.
And that's a lesson to be had by the young fucking wrestlers of today. And or sometimes the young bookers of today. When they always want to match up the two biggest stars all the time, sometimes the two biggest stars, what helps them get to be the two biggest stars is because they worked with the other guy and it helped them get over. And or just because you like all three people, it's chemistry. Who fits better stylistically rather than who you like better.
I love the Flair Steamboat matches, but I actually prefer the Savage match. Again, it's the first...
Well, fuck you. I'm never going to speak to you again.
It's the first thing I saw growing up. You know, I saw that before I saw the Flair match. And the arena, the building, the fact that it happened at WrestleMania 3 in that building, it looked incredible. The other thing is, I love the commentary on that match. And midway through the match, Ventura just says, "This is the greatest match I've ever seen." In the middle of the match, he just all of a sudden says it because it hits him, and then it keeps going and getting better. It was different than anything else you saw in WWF typically. You know, Bret Hart and Steamboat would have a good match on a house show, but it wasn't on a big position like this. And the thing they also have in common, for good and for bad, Steamboat and Savage and Steamboat and Flair, I think, were big influences on the style of matches that young guys who were training to be wrestlers wanted to work. Lots of near falls, kick out of things. They took it too far.
Yeah.
It wasn't as smart as what they did, but I think those matches, and a few Bret Hart matches, those were big influences on a lot of the next generation of wrestlers and the style.
Well, and see, here's the thing. I agree with you 100%. The problem was it just influenced the body of work of the performers didn't influence those people. The idea that this is the greatest match that they've ever had in their careers also, so we're going to try to do that every time we wrestle. That's what became the problem. They ignored the context of what got to that point to where these guys were so over and had become such great talents in such big companies that they're finally going to be matched in this major match on this major show. And then they do 14 false finishes. Not in Poughkeepsie on Tuesday. Every week. But anyway, I'll tell you what, I was, and by the way, then clarify this for me, because then I want to get to January 1989, where for about a week and a half, I was actually excited that George Scott had arrived and TBS had bought the company.
Yeah, and if you grew up and saw any of those angles they did in the late 70s, you got to see those again.
Well, yes, and actually, I didn't even mind that, because they were as good the second time around, and most people hadn't fucking seen them. But back up a second, because you need to tell me what the fuck's up with this. Steamboat said that Vince had him drop the Intercontinental title to Honky Tonk Man because he asked for 2 weeks off. He wanted to spend more time with his family, Little Richie. No mention or pictures of Bonnie, but Little Richie was all over the place. No, what was the real deal? What happened? He said, we can't leave the Intercontinental belt dormant for 2 weeks. I don't know how Vince would have even sold that in 1988 or whatever it was. What was the real deal?
I don't exactly know. Now, I can see Vince saying that as a line of bullshit for whatever reason.
Well, but Ricky then said, well, then I took 6 months off instead.
And he did. He was gone until WrestleMania 4.
Well, that's why I'm wondering if maybe he didn't ask for 6 months to begin with, and or at least 3 months or something. Because 2 weeks, I know how Vince booked. You didn't defend the title on television in those days. Was he trying to miss a NBC special?
And again, this wasn't on an NBC special. This was on the syndicated show. Honky Tonk Man got the belt. The story throughout the years, and there are people who believe it, people who don't, was that Butch Reed was supposed to get it, but instead Honky Tonk Man got it. This led to a lot of the stuff on NBC with Savage and Honky Tonk, the Hart Foundation getting involved, and eventually leads to the thing where in a few months, Honky Tonk Man refuses to lose the belt back to Savage, threatens to go to TBS, and they rebook everything so that instead of Ted DiBiase winning the world title tournament, Savage does.
It's a domino effect is what it is.
That's right. It's all Bonnie Steamboat's fault. Well,
it's all Bonnie Steamboat.
I'm kidding. My question was going to be, because I know it was the case with Herd, was Bonnie negotiating for Ricky with Vince? That would be my question.
I don't know. But so the point is, I'm not calling Ricky a liar. I'm saying it, and sometimes we can remember these things, but I think there's some middle ground in there between him saying, I want to take 2 weeks off, and Vince made me drop the belt, so I took 6 months instead. But he wanted to be home more with his family.
And the finish almost looks like a screw job, and it wasn't. But it was such an awkwardly done roll-up with him and Honky Tonk. It looked really bad.
Well, sometimes the cake doesn't quite rise. But anyway, so he's gone 6 months and he goes back. But at that point, Vince is not using him. You know, the old-time promoters, they didn't like people who cracked under pressure and wanted off. So he gave his notice and he left. And that's the thing is, I hate that for the last 4 or 5 years of Ricky's full-time wrestling career, he was still only part-time because he was in such great shape. But anyway, that we get to January 89, and I remember getting to, we were still doing a show at the TBS studios on Techwood Drive, but I think they had switched it to where it was nighttime tapings now instead of Saturday mornings. And that's when I found out that Steamboat was going to be Eddie Gilbert's partner against Flair and Wyndham, because I can't remember what interaction Eddie had been having with Barry Windham or how Eddie was in that, but he had a mystery partner. Do you even remember better than me?
Eddie was having issues with Flair and Wyndham, and it led to the mystery partner thing. For a while, it seemed like Eddie, and if there was ever a time where anything was going to happen, 1988 was probably his year. That's the year he runs over Lawler. That's the year he books Continental. There's a lot of sheet buzz coming into him being hired by Turner or hired by WCW. And this was kind of where it still seemed like he was going to get a push. And then quickly everything went to Rick Steamboat. Not that it shouldn't have.
Well, but here the thing is, there's both these things can be true. You just know, Uncle Huck, that Eddie was trying to maneuver himself into the booking position with the new owners, right? Because that's a thing that Eddie would have done. Eddie wanted to be the booker. And it wasn't far-fetched because Dusty was just gone. Jimmy Crockett had been the interim guy. Eddie, I'm sure was trying to muster some forces that would recommend him, with the newsletters or whatever the case, and politicking. And it didn't hurt that he's working with Ric Flair and Barry Windham. And this was before Flair had any issues with Eddie, as I recall. So there wasn't anything personal going on. But they hired George Scott. The first thing that George Scott's able to do is bring Ricky Steamboat in to be Eddie Gilbert's mystery partner. And as you said, they have that match in the studio, and Steamboat looks phenomenal. And he beats Flair, and everybody's fucking jumping up and down. And that's when Eddie kind of got lost. And after the George Scott debacle, as you'll recall, when they went to a committee, Eddie was on it. And that was only 3 months later. And so
then Eddie left the committee because he booked something. Ric Flair booked something for him to lose in Memphis against Ron Simmons. Was that it? And Eddie refused?
Eddie didn't leave. No, Eddie didn't leave. Eddie was invited to leave the booking committee, but he was on the committee after George Scott, and we'll get back to Ricky Steamboat. But after George Scott, the committee became, besides Jim Herd and Jim Barnett, and Jody Hamilton, who they made sit in there, and they were going to be regardless of whatever. It had become Kevin Sullivan, Jim Ross, Eddie Gilbert, and help me, maybe not anybody else at that point. And that lasted about 3 months, but the sins of George Scott did worse damage to the ratings because they kept going down, even though the other guys tried to do something about it. So by June and into July, that's when it was the worst it had ever been thus far. It would get worse later. And that's when Flair demanded, make me the booker. As soon as that happened, he still had all the people on the committee working for him, with him, whatever the terminology was, but he was the head guy and made decisions.
And by the way, just to tack it onto the story, when Flair became head of the booking committee, that's right when Rick Steamboat left, right when him and Herd had the problems.
Well, yes, and that's another thing. He's like, what the fuck, which we'll get into in a second, and now we've lost Steamboat. And look at these numbers and look at these fucking bullshit. But anyway, the problem was then Flair got, as we've noticed, when Rick gets cranky with you, he'll stay that way for a while, or maybe not sometimes on Twitter, but he'll stay that way. He gets a negative impression of you. I think he didn't particularly read the newsletters or have any knowledge of any of Eddie's booking in Continental or in Memphis, or he knew Tommy, Eddie's father was a wrestler and he wasn't being disrespectful, but it wasn't like he came from the Gagne wrestling dynasty to Rick, right? And he's looking at a bunch of people. Kevin Sullivan was the only person he wanted to keep on the committee as it existed, because everybody else it was either counterproductive or he didn't particularly feel they had that much to offer. But Eddie, they have a show in Memphis, and since he's on the booking committee, Flair's not there, but Flair sends the finishes. And it was for Ron Simmons, who at that point was getting bigger, but it wasn't Doom or anything yet, right? Ron wasn't main event guy, but still is Ron fucking Simmons. It is for Ron to beat Eddie. And Eddie looked at that and like in Memphis and like as a personal insult, as like a shocking slap in the face. Flair didn't think, I'm sure, any goddamn thing about it whatsoever. Because as he said after the fact, it's not goddamn Memphis, it's fucking WCW. We're on TBS, for fuck's sake. But Eddie took it personally and he changed, I think, the finish to some kind of DQ. I don't know if he turned it around and beat Ron. He might have, whatever. No, maybe he DQ'd Ron since he was a heel anyway. Whatever the fuck. That's when Flair called me and said, hey, you want to be on the booking committee? Because I'm fixing to fucking have an open chair because I'm getting rid of one guy. That's the way Flair, I'm getting rid of this guy, or I'm getting rid of the other guy. Once that you know who he's talking about, he'll never name him again. And yes, please. What I'll do, whatever, just tell me when you need me, Rick. I have nothing to do with Eddie, right? So then, goddamn, I know we're meandering here.
No, this is good. This is good.
Well, we'll make up time with a shortened fucking SmackDown review. So then, I'm sitting waiting, right, for a week or two or whatever it was. And then Flair calls me and says, okay, I've told him I'm replacing Eddie Gilbert. He's off the deal. Or I've told him you're coming, be at the meeting Tuesday, whatever the fuck, however he told me. And so then that's when I went to the first booking meeting was at the actual CNN Center, TBS or WCW offices. And the boardroom table with Hurd and that old fucking thing. But Eddie had told the story, and I'm not trying to speak ill of him, but it wasn't true, that, well, he didn't find out that he was off the committee until he walked in and saw Jim Cornette sitting in his chair. Well, for one thing, we didn't have assigned seating. When you got in there, you tried to sit as far away from where you knew Hurd was going to be as possible, right? Otherwise, it was up in the air. And secondly, he already knew because he didn't come to a meeting and open the door and I was there. That never happened. Flair told him about it beforehand, and there was ill will between them because of that. Because it was, again, polar opposites. Eddie felt that his name and his reputation in Memphis and Continental and the Gilbert family and his reputation with the smart fans and the newsletters for his innovative booking should garner more respect than probably it actually at that point maybe needed. He was very good with especially with getting like Heyman, with getting a lot out of a little. His best talent was still in the ring. He was a very excellent worker and he could talk. But whereas he thought it should probably have a little bit more respect than it did, Flair gave it absolutely fucking none, because to who is fucking Eddie Gilbert to Ric Flair? So he was on the other level of the fuck. Who the fuck is this guy? Kevin Sullivan, I know he's worked for Eddie Graham for 15 years. Who the fuck is this guy?
You bring up polar opposites to tie it back to Rick Steamboat and the experience in Japan. One of my favorite Eddie Gilbert stories is when working for Wing, one of the outlaw groups in the 90s, if we are going to call it that.
Yes.
Him and Doug, and Eddie really didn't work Japan, got on the mic, took off their monster masks, challenged or ran down Mickey Ibaragi, who ran the promotion, and then my favorite part, pledged their allegiance to Giant Baba.
I remember that. They never worked forever, did they?
Never. And Baba, can you imagine when Baba heard that? Like, I'm not hiring these two.
Allegiance to me? Who are they? Who are these people who are allies of mine? Oh.
What a move. There was a series of, we're not going to make this about Eddie Gilbert. There was just a series of bizarre incidents around Eddie Gilbert in front of fans for like 5 years.
God damn it. All right. Since here's the thing. I liked Eddie. Doug's a nut. Doug, I've told you about before. He got mad, cussed me on the internet because I wrote the foreword to Howard Brody's biography, right? I wrote, Howard's had an interesting life. Boy, read this book. And then Doug didn't fucking like what Howard wrote about Eddie, so he fucking cussed me. And on the fucking internet, you and your fucking book, you fucking redneck, you can't read a book, much less know what anybody else has written. But anyway, it was Christmas week of 1980. I believe, or was it 81? For the purposes of the story, it matters not, but my records can correct it if anybody wants me to tell them. Tommy and Eddie Gilbert, baby faces, father-son tag team. They're fixing to leave the territory. I think that may have been when they went to Tulsa and worked for McGurk.
79 into 80, right?
Well, but then maybe it wasn't, because I think it was I seem to remember Killer Carl Krupp was here. That may have put it at 1980.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, the point is, the Louisville Gardens had put a big punch. It's Christmas week, right? They had put a big punch bowl back there with punch for Teeny and for all the boys and the referees, and they'd put some Christmas cake or cookies, whatever the fuck. It's 40 fucking years ago. I don't remember what the food was. I just remember the effect of the punch. Because apparently after Teeny had somebody somehow spiked it, or maybe they took one down in the locker room where Teeny didn't go. They had one down, but some punch got spiked. And apparently, this is what I was told. I was a mere photographer, but I'm shooting Tommy and Eddie's match with the heels and some guy at ringside, because Eddie was young and gangly in those days. And one of the guys at ringside was fucking hooting at him, right? And Tommy got vocal with the guy back. And then Eddie did too, kind of a little bit, and the fucking heels were trying to redirect it. And the point is, after the match, somehow Tommy ended up going out through, or Eddie ended up going out through the fucking middle of ringside after the fan. Tommy ended up going out there too. I don't know whether to pull him back, and the cops went out there and they're yelling and cussing. And Teeny was hot because she came out and said something to the effect of, the Gilberts have been into the spiked punch. So I'm just telling you what I'm observing. There's the baby faces suddenly have an argument where they go out in the middle of the goddamn crowd at ringside yelling at one of the fucking fans, and then they're asked to fucking, go back to the locker room. And later on, Teeny's like, they spiked the punch. The Gilberts had too much punch. What the fuck? So, the fuck? Anyway, where were we?
We're talking about Ricky Steamboat having too much of Jim Herd's punch.
Yes, because that's the thing. He signed, because he didn't know about this new company, TBS. He was taking a chance on burning his bridge with Vince McMahon, who he'd been working with, but he knew Jim Crockett, who had just sold the company. He knew George Scott, and had good experiences in his career with George Scott before George developed fucking brain epilepsy or whatever caused him to be a complete idiot. But still, it was a chance. So he said, I'll agree to 6 months, and they had to give him a decent money deal. What was it? I don't remember, because it wasn't such and such $100,000 per year, because it was a 6-month deal. So at the time, from the standards at the time, would it have been $150,000 for 6 months, $200,000? Somewhere in there?
I can't tell you, because in so many cases, there's not much rhyme or reason to who got offered what. But whatever it wasn't what he was going to get going forward. Well,
that's the thing, is that, he's brought in and with a favorable booker, and the guy and they don't know the booker is an idiot yet. And the guy says, I'm going to give this guy a big push. He's going to be a top guy. But then, the problem is 6 months later, everything that Steamboat needed to deliver, he did, except the creative decision that the company did and went with of featuring him as a family man, which smacks of Jim Herd, and featuring Bonnie in the ball gowns.
But smacks of Bonnie. I wonder if it smacks of Bonnie, because remember when Steamboat returned.
Well, it smacks of
WrestleMania
it smacks
4.
of both of them. It smacks of like when Vince McMahon got together with Sable. Both of them were smacking. Then this talentless, fucking personalityless bitch gets featured, and it kills the on-air talent that she's with.
Because when Steamboat returned at WrestleMania 4, it was, remember, they had the stuff of him and little Ricky when he was a baby in the ring at WrestleMania 4. So it was starting then, when he returned from the hiatus.
Anyway, nevertheless, Steamboat had some of the great matches of all time. He's a model employee. He looked like a superhero again. Even if he wasn't second coming of Farmer Burns and fucking Frank Gotch. after 6 months, he just had a great match with Lex Luger. This is whether his booker was still there or not. Flair loved him. All the talent loved him. And not in like, he's our friend, but in, no, this is a guy we want to work with. He makes everybody look better. He's not selfish. He's selfless. And he's still a name, even if you don't want to put him in world title contention. Here's the guy to wrestle for the U.S. title or drop it to a heel, whatever the case. And Hurd once cut his money in half, like he did with everybody else. And no, it's the same thing he tried with us. Same thing he tried with the Road Warriors. It wasn't, you could understand if it was a talent who wasn't producing, wasn't performing the things that they were asked to be done in a entertaining or successful way, if they were the shits, if they were a problem. But no, just being in a company that's not drawing any money for reasons beyond their control, i.e. the fucking ownership, the management, then no, don't cut my money. Smarten your ass up. That's what we spent about a year altogether. Me, meaning we, Flair, myself, Kevin Sullivan, all the people that were in the administration during that floating period of time, Jim Ross, whoever, Terry Funk, trying to smarten up Jim Hurd. Don't penalize the talent because you're fucking this place up, because that doesn't sell. If we had just suddenly shit our fucking pants in the middle of the ring and we're producing horrible television shows and horrible fucking matches, and the people at the buildings didn't give two shits about us when they were there, then cut our money. But no, you fucking... Anyway.
Well, remember, too, earlier that year, 1989, is when Jim Hurd met with Randy Savage, met with Roddy Piper, who was about to return to WWF, and apparently gave them both lowball offers. I mean, it all goes back to the same problem.
Well, and here's the thing. Somebody's going to say, well, they wouldn't spend any money then, TBS. Then don't have the fucking meeting. Because what he did every time he did, or then agree to something and go back on your word. Remember, Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson gave notice to the WWF after a year and came back on the promise of Ric Flair that they would be featured in the Horsemen again, the top spot, and that Hurd had agreed to pay them each $250,000 a year. And after they give notice and it was too late to turn back, Hurd fucking rescinds the offer to Tully because he flunked the drug test for Vince, and then cut Arn's money $100,000 because you're not as worth as much without Tully. So he fucked Tully completely and cut Arn's money almost in half before he started because he was a lying sack of shit.
And he didn't even know who Arn was.
Well, and who gave, Arn didn't know who Hurd was. Arn was going on Flair's fucking word because Flair was promised by Hurd. That's one of the first things that went wrong. But to your point with the other guys, if you know who somebody is in the fucking business and you have a meeting with them, you're either going to talk seriously and give them an offer comparable to a job they would be leaving, or you're just exposing yourself as a fucking idiot that they're going to go back to their current employer, to the fucking locker room, and say, this fucking guy tried to give me $100,000. What the fuck? Between ridiculous offers, not being serious, and then lying to guys, that's why the only people that left Vince to go for fucking WCW for the next 5 years were the goddamn people that Vince fired and ran off. Anyway, so then Ricky was gone again. And then, you mentioned this earlier, goes back to the WWF, the full dragon blowing fire gimmick. And I swear, here's what I wrote. Bruce, of course, defends this nonsense.
How though? See, that's the thing. Who was it for? I go back to this like I asked about the women's division. I was a kid. I was 11 years old when he returned. Ricky Steamboat Karate Master was a whole lot cooler than Man Spitting Fire, who they didn't even use his name for a while. They tried to make it just The Dragon, no Ricky Steamboat.
Yeah, while he's wearing a big blow-up pool iguana on his back.
No, he was really, really cool as the Ricky Steamboat of the mid to late 80s. That worked. There was no reason to change it. That was Vince fiddling with something for no good reason, and it helped no one. And of course, he didn't get a push, so it didn't matter. But no, Bruce Pritchard trying to defend that is ridiculous because in terms of marketability alone, the Ricky Steamboat character that he had been up to that point was more marketable than a fire-breathing dragon. For who? Is it for children or is it for adults? Who is that for? Because kids didn't really care about it.
Well, besides that, here's the other thing also. It looks great in a compilation video on television, but at the house show, it was over in 4 fucking seconds, and then he's got to goddamn rinse his mouth out and shit. But didn't they think, well, what about if the kids try to gargle some fucking alcohol and blow into a goddamn Bic lighter to imitate their goddamn hero? How did they get by with that? I'd a whole lot rather them hit each other with the rubber nunchucks for Ricky the Dragon martial arts Steamboat than have fucking third-degree burns from kerosene poisoning or whatever.
Did you hear that story about the first time that the guy they hired to train him how to spit the fire did it outside? All the kerosene went in his own face and his face was on fire.
No, you see, that shit don't always, even if you know what you're doing. I don't. And it's kerosene of some description.
I understand in his divorce, that was the first thing listed. Breath.
Irreconcilable breath.
Irreconcilable breath.
But anyway, so then he goes back to WCW in 1992 to team with Shane Douglas.
Which is wrong. They show him returning at the end of 91 to team with Dustin to win the tag titles when Barry Windham got hurt against
that's right.
Zbyszko and Arn. But they said it was 92 and they said it was with Shane Douglas, which is what he did at the very, very, very end of 92, mostly early 93 until Shane left.
Now that you say that, I do remember Ricky Steamboat and Dustin Rhodes, but that's just to the point where, as Smoky Mountain was taking up a lot of my time, but I knew about Steamboat and Shane because when we did the deal with Watts toward the end of 92 and the February 93 pay-per-view, that's when Steamboat was teaming with Shane Douglas. They were the babyface team, and the Rock and Roll Express and the Bodies came in from Smoky Mountain, and we had that 8-man tag on the syndicated television with the Bodies and Steve Austin and Brian Pillman against the Rock and Roll Express and Steamboat and Shane Douglas, which was an interesting lineup.
And then Shane left, but they were still the tag team champions, so they put Tom Zink under a hood.
Oh, boy.
And they made Ricky Steamboat and Tom Zink Dos Hombres. Basically trying to make it sound like it was still Shane Douglas under the mask.
Did it get dose over?
It was over pretty quick.
It was overdosed. There you go.
And that was kind of the end of Tom Zink in WCW, too.
Boy, talk about trading your house for a tent with... But anyway, and then, he hurt his back and his first serious injury ever. And that's what pretty much puts an end to his career.
How many back injuries have we seen now? From Dynamite Kid, the house show footage that's out there, to what Shawn Michaels claims hurt his back, to the Ricky Steamboat clip here.
Simplest fucking thing.
The bump that hurts the back doesn't look bad at all, and it does all the damage.
But, also, I hate to make this simile, the straw that broke the camel's back. If you've done it, because actually Dynamites may have been that also.
Yeah, that's right.
If you've done enough damage to something and you don't realize that you've done that particular damage, then something slight or not as impressive can be the thing. And, a lot of times just shit that actually just gets you the right way is not as visual as the guy, doing cartwheels over the top rope and landing with his neck in a fucking incinerator. I don't know. But it was I know what he means in that we'll talk about it later on if we ever get there. When we talk about the Clash at the Castle pay-per-view where Damian Priest did the hangman spot with his ankle and everybody was concentrating on the arm or on the leg because that was what was caught in the ropes. He almost broke his neck.
Yeah, the way he hit the apron was brutal.
Yes. He head first to the apron almost, if that had been an inch either way. But, you never know the snap when Steamboat went to push off and he slipped off the rope. Then that causes you to tense in a completely different kind of involuntary way because you're, oh, shit. And then when you land, you're tense and anyway, that's what happened. But, again, he's living in Knoxville now, which I didn't even realize. And he does the car racing, Hot Rod Steamboat. And they talked about his run as a producer and agent in WWE and the Hall of Fame induction, which he teared up about also. But I remember when we joked about it, didn't joke about it, but that Jericho gave him some kind of stroke or whatever when he had that match where he came back when he was 56 and still looked fantastic, but it was a brain bleed that was nearly fatal and he was in intensive care for 3 weeks. Did we know it was that serious?
Yeah, I remember hearing it was a brain bleed and I didn't realize,
Well, you and I weren't doing this then.
We weren't doing this, but, I also don't know too much about brain bleeds and the fact that they told him there's nothing we could do. You just got to wait it out and hope that it doesn't kill you. That's crazy to hear.
But I don't know if I remember that I knew that it was this serious as a health issue as it was here. But
coincidentally enough, a lot of AEW Dynamite viewers report brain bleeds every time there's a Chris Jericho segment on the show.
Well, see, now he's a carrier. He's like Typhoid Mary. Never actually suffered from the disease, but brought it on for those around her. But anyway, again, one of the nice guys, one of the rare biographies where he's still working out, he stays in shape, he's got the nice wife, the nice home, saved his money apparently, not on drugs, doesn't have to do indies. And he has cute dogs. The end.
You knew it was going to end well when it started and he's doing an interview in front of his office.
Yeah. You're saying that most people don't just fucking use the security camera in their fucking trailer too.
Well, most of these biographies, when you see the guy interviewed, you're always like, oh, is there a bed in the background? Is that a couch? Where the hell are they? He was in front of his office with an Intercontinental Championship belt behind him.
Every once in a while, they put people in random hotel lobbies, though, just to throw us off.
Yeah, like where was Keith Elliott Greenberg? That certainly is not his office or his house. He was like in a nightclub or something. What was that?
I'm not sure. Well, we don't want to judge. Maybe he's one to knock one back in the middle of the afternoon. We don't know about these things.
That has nothing to do with home decor.
Well, I thought you meant he was in some kind of saloon up there somewhere in the Bronx.
A saloon in the Bronx?
Yeah, really? They got those gin joints up there.
That's right.
I'll tell you.
I just saw something the other day where some family, they bought a house on Lake Michigan, I think. And while redoing the hot tub, they found underneath it an old Prohibition-era tunnel for bootlegging. Like an underground tunnel that was apparently going to several of the houses for whoever was sneaking whiskey over the border from Canada.
See, I thought you were going to say they found some bones of skeletons of some of the bootleggers.
No, boring. That's not exciting anymore.
All right.
Anyone can find bones in a yard. What's
fun
in that?
I'll tell you what. Sometimes there's plenty of fun. Depends on whose bones and whether you wanted them found. But I'll tell you what. You know what you need to do with your bones, Brian? You need to lay those tired old sore bones down in a sleep that will rejuvenate and replenish you, that will give you rest and relaxation and recuperation The only kind of sleep that you can get from Helix and our friends at Helix Sleep, because that's the kind of sleep that you need. You need the sleep of the angels. You need the sleep of the peaceful and the tranquil. You need to be floating in a cloud. You need to be wrapped in comfort, like you were being swaddled in baby clothing and fucking swung back and forth from your mother with a couple of big old tits flopping in your face. And that's the only kind of experience that you can get.
I like what I'm hearing. You could certainly represent me.
Well, that's the kind of experience you're going to get when you take the Helix Sleep quiz on their website, which, of course, as I mentioned, is helixsleep.com. And you tell them what kind of mattress, because they got so many mattresses. You got to answer some questions because they've got the award-winning Luxe collection, the Ultra Premium Elite collection, the Helix Plus, which is that mattress designed for big and tall sleepers. Now, let's say you're 8'6". They've got a fucking tray at the end that pulls right out, gives you an extra 2 feet to prop your feet on. Or let's say you're 1,100 pounds and you're so corpulent, the people have to roll you in flour and look for the wet spot. They've got one that's extra wide, extra wide. It's extra wide, so you can flop and flop all you want. You ain't gonna come over that edge of that thing, you big and tall folks. And the kids' mattresses, which are designed for growing bodies. And Brian, you set me straight on it. I thought it was something where you could put the bodies on the mattress and it would help them grow. But instead, it's designed for a body that's already growing to sleep on it.
That's right. That would be a body-growing mattress. That is not the case here. This is a mattress.
This is a growing body mattress.
It's a body. It's a mattress that supports body growth.
Well, and also the kids' mattresses also good for elves and dwarves. Snow White in the latest flick is coming out on TMZ soon. She's got 7 of these things lined up in her bedroom.
On TMZ?
That's why it's coming out on TMZ. She's got 7 of these lined up in her bedroom. But right, folks, everybody is unique. And everyone sleeps differently, but they've got several different models to choose from at Helix with a 100-night free trial, a 10 to 15, well, not a free trial. You got to pay for it. If you're going to send it back, they'll give you your money back. But yeah, they ain't just going to send it to you and let you defile this thing. But they got a 10 to 15-year warranty. So if you're 58 to 62, let's say you might not have to get another one. But anyway, folks, memory foam layers cool down, more responsive foam. They will cradle your body in stomach and back sleeping positions like a baby. And they'll keep you from overheating. They'll do all of these things. And there's no asbestos. Are you aware of this, Brian? We've talked about this before. There's no fiberglass, no asbestos. There's no thumbtacks or broken glass or yard sweepings as well in the Helix mattresses. So we've got that going for us. I don't know how you could be more comfortable. How could you be more comfortable?
You can't. I could be more comfortable if I was actually laying in my Helix sleep mattress like I want to be right now.
Well, don't let me keep you up. For heaven's sake, don't let me bore you here if I'm just extolling the virtues of these fine things. You can have them delivered to your door in a box and then just open them up and poof, there they go. And folks, right now, Helix is offering up to 30% off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners. And no one else deserves sleep. Definitely not comfort. We want the people who don't listen to us to be as uncomfortable and as sleepless and restless, cranky and irritable as possible. But folks, if you do listen to us, we'll save you money and get you free pillows. Go to helixsleep.com/JCE, helixsleep.com/JCE. The JCE is the important part to save the 30% and get the 2 free pillows. And these things are not just goddamn fun bags either. They're giant full-size pillows.
They're not fun bags, no.
No, not just little fucking dingleberries. They're giant full-size pillows that you can put on a grown person's mattress or a kid's mattress if the kid has a preternaturally large head. HelixSleep.com/JCE.
Well, Jim, in the 90s, I don't know if Helix Sleep was around back then. I don't think it was, but a lot of people, if you didn't have a good night's sleep and you woke up in the middle of the night, Nitro was on again. Something a lot of people don't talk about. WCW Nitro aired again the same night right after it aired.
That's right. And that's unwieldy grammar, but I now you have reminded me of that. They just started over and repeated the whole goddamn thing again. They had like 4 hours.
But it was a big advantage because it just reiterated everything from before. It wasn't like 4 fresh hours. It was 2 hours and 2 hour replay. And that was probably a big benefit to them, but you
could watch both.
That's right. You can watch both. A lot of us did that. A lot of us who were taping both used that as a nice tool. But we're talking about the death of WCW or Who Killed WCW.
Which is, and there's a lot of tools involved in that.
And of course, episode 2 this past week on Vice. This is your show, but I'm just taking over here. Who Killed WCW, episode 2.
Well, that's the daggum question we've been asking. And I'll tell you one thing that we haven't got to the aha moment yet. It's only second episode down, third one coming up, fourth one is the finale. So we haven't got to the aha moment, but we have settled one debate. We know who has the best agent or PR guy that set up their deal. This is the Eric Bischoff show. Now, I know he's the best storyteller. He's the most charismatic guy of all of the people involved in the talking heads. And he also helped recruit many of the talking heads who might be somewhat like-minded. And the narrative seems to be letting Eric plead his case most sympathetically. There are counterpoints to be had, but
Bret Hart.
Well, you got to have the counterpoints. It's hard not to have the counterpoints, but they're kind of glossing over and letting him get away because he's so smooth with it. A lot of shit that Eric says, he just blurts, it's not the case. It's not true, Poop Deck Pappy. And maybe it's misremembering. I don't know. Was he on any type of chemical enhancements back in those days? It was a wild, crazy time. Maybe he doesn't remember everything, but it's always standards and practices fault and this and that. And we'll hear more on that, I'm sure, next week. But also he's Bret Hart. Well, he needed a new star for Thunder. He'd been talking to Bret for 2 years. It started in 96. Then Vince let him in 97 before they pitched Thunder. But anyway, there is some finger pointing starting to be done here. And the title of the episode was The Streak is Over, because, of course, 83 weeks was the magic number. And from living through it and being up there on the other side, there was definitely consternation in Stamford about the continual ratings losses, even though, Brian, when you look back, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but we know that it was multiple times what they are now. Vince was yelling at everybody and mad, we got to do something and let's hotshot this thing and get the Zamboni and whatever the fuck, with an audience of probably, 3 times, 4 times what they have right now?
I don't know the numbers, but significantly larger, yeah.
Probably be 3. So...
Hey, were you working there? You know what I hadn't even thought about until you just started saying all this? Didn't Bischoff take out a billboard right opposite Titan Tower?
Oh, God, I think, well, not like with his picture on it like a real estate
guy,
WCW. But a WCW. Well, yeah.
Like a real estate guy. That would have been a hell of a move. Looking for real estate in Stamford? Oh, what a move that would have been.
Either that or any Connecticut employees thinking of moving to Georgia, call ETE at 1-800.
Oh, man.
Oh, God. But so it starts out that Bischoff says that, Schiller calls him, they want 2 more hours because Nitro's so good. And the question is, will it weaken Monday? But Bischoff didn't want to tell Ted no. And then that's when he said he needed a star. He brought Brett in for Thunder, which I mean, everybody knows that's obviously not the case. Go ahead.
That's obviously not the case. However, that may not necessarily be not the case, in awful English right there. But we don't know how he sold it to the Turner executives, is the point.
Well, true. So maybe he doesn't want to fucking expose himself after all this time.
Because again, you had to justify a giant contract, the biggest in the company. You also had to deal with, at that time, guys who had most favored nations contracts. I think Kevin Nash and Scott Hall had to waive it for Brett.
Yeah, they did.
So there were a lot of things with money moving around. How are you going to justify that? Hey, you're making us take on another 2 hours.
But that's when they have all the talking heads who, about the only thing they universally agreed on was they put Brett over. Everybody that had a comment, oh yeah, Brett, they put him over big. And he came in, as we've talked about so many times, after the Montreal screw job for $2.8 million a year. And I think it was going to be 3 years. It was going to be. And Brett says, I had a great first night in and everything, quote, went downhill from there. And the quote was, everything Eric Bischoff ever said was a lie. So that's where we start there. And then they start telling the story that everybody said, well, they can't book 10 hours a week. And they expand the NWO to, have 30 people in multiple groups and whatever, all the things that they did. Yeah, well, both of these things can be true. Maybe it might be difficult to book 10 hours a week with the pay-per-view or whatever, but at the same time, you don't have to just do ridiculous, stupid shit at the last minute for almost no reason, which is what they were doing weekly, depending on who he was listening to and how much sleep everybody had. And so that the problem with booking too much television is that you dilute. There's not as much happening. You're booking more television, so you got to make more shit happen. You make more shit happen, and people can't keep track of the goddamn shit that was happening. Are you keeping track of this?
I'm keeping track of this shit that's happening, yes.
All right. Well, anyway, that's what they're very sympathetic to themselves, but no, it was a rotten television program with little pre-planning. And this is going to be an issue. It wasn't at that point, but it will be later on in this program, the money they were spending on talent. But anyway, Goldberg, they create a star. Really by accident, they just let him go out there with minimal training in the early days, remember, and had no thought of a win streak. They just knew, well, we don't want to beat this fucking guy.
I think Mike Tenay came up with the winning streak.
Mike Tenay came up with the winning streak after there technically was one, because they had a green football player that they thought they could do something with, but he wasn't very good, so they didn't want to let him go very long, so they just had him beat people. This is not rocket surgery or brain science. It's as old as wrestling. It's the old-fashioned, monster push for a big green guy, a Leviathan in Ohio Valley Wrestling. But that's the thing, is that then when the fans started liking it, because a great-looking guy like that, a huge monster winning in dominant fashion, explosively and looking like it hurts, which it did, that gets over with people. So they start chanting for him, or they start cheering. And that's when Mike Tenay said, hey, he's undefeated. Let's go with this. And that became a thing. But they backed into it. And then they fucked it up. They didn't even mention in the show where they started manufacturing the streak that people were keeping track of on television week to week. But
yeah,
the next week on TV, he'd have multiple more wins than it was possible for him to have had matches. And it just all was bullshit, right? Because the fans were keeping better track than the company was. But that's a thing. They got him over as an attraction. But he was still green. And as you hear from his own lips and from listening to him talk, he kind of is a mark. And he was never taught, and he didn't know what the fuck he was doing. And you can't blame him when he becomes one of the biggest wrestling stars of all time in fucking 6 months, knowing dick all about what he's doing.
Going through the power plant.
Yes, I mean, and having those matches. So that's the thing is, again, you're dealing with polar opposites is a theme today on the program. Now you're going to have Goldberg and Bret Hart. Bret Hart, who is almost like a goddamn Picasso of wrestling, who prides himself in his art and his craft and his business and is serious as a heart attack. And the one thing that he's proudest of is never hurting anybody. And then you have Goldberg, who's like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. They just told me to do this thing. God, it's great when the fans cheer for me. And hey, I told him the kick was coming. What kind of kick? From fucking where? More on that later. Anyway, they create the star, and even Nash is talking about how stiff he was. Like, dude, brother, and nobody wanted to stand in front of that. And then they told the story about when Goldberg got over, that Bischoff says, Hulk called me and said, it's time. I want to put Goldberg over in the Georgia Dome. This was the best one of the fucking...
You know what? At least they had one person from the corporate side there to say the obvious. Why isn't this on pay-per-view?
Yes.
It's not just like the wrestling people that really knew. That guy was on the business side. He's like, what the fuck? Why are we giving this away for free?
Well, Brian, stop me if I leave anything out. But what it was they were so hot, and especially in Atlanta, they had booked the Georgia Dome for a Nitro with nothing advertised. And they sold like 25,000 tickets. And then they kept selling, and they were going to do close to 40,000 people. And also, all the Turner executives were going to be there because it's in Atlanta and it's such a big deal. It's going to be on national television. And less than a week before, that's when Hulk tells Bischoff, yeah, I want to wrestle fucking Goldberg. And well, did he tell him he wanted to wrestle him first, and then he said he'd put him over?
I think that may have been when he said he would drop it to him, because I think they advertised the match first locally as a non-title match.
Yes, but that was only a week or two out.
Right, and then...
there was no promotion.
Like, between the Nitro before and the Nitro it aired, there was there was nothing on the Nitro before saying that. I don't think. Again, I'm trying to remember in real time. But there was no promotion for it, and there should have been. It would have been the biggest pay-per-view in company history.
Well, yeah, it might have been the biggest pay-per-view in pay-per-view history at that point. But the thing is, Hogan knew he would look good if he was in the main event of the biggest house they ever drew in front of all the TBS executives, and he put himself in that match in the main event that hadn't been advertised in less than 2 weeks with no promotion, no angles, no nothing, just we're going to have it. And they gave it away on free television.
And he gets to say he drew the house.
He gets to say he drew the house, or doesn't even have to say that. It's in the people, it's in the executives' minds. Well, Hogan's the main event guy, and look, here's Goldberg. And then they nullified it and fucking switched it around. Weeks later, right? So they blew the match on free TV and with a week's promotion for Hulk's ego. And then they took it off of him with the goofy thing with Nash, which we'll discuss in a second. But first, this fiasco.
Yeah, and again, it was a big moment in terms of, as a fan, it was one of the great moments in WCW, maybe the last really great one. Goldberg winning the title from Hogan, like you said, they didn't address them botching it up already with the fake numbers that were clearly fake to the viewers.
And also, Goldberg remarked on how thrilling it was, the crowd popping for him when he won the title. You could tell he's like the Road Warriors the first year or two. When they got fucking excited, Jesus Christ, it's like getting hit with a Volkswagen.
He's a less offensive Ultimate Warrior in a lot of ways.
Yes. And I'm not saying he's not wrong. No, the Warrior had multiple chances to get it right and was a prick. This guy was just thrown into shit and was a phenomenon. A stiff phenomenon made out of potatoes.
And that, again, that match would have made more money for WCW than any other match ever. It would have broken the pay-per-view record for that company, and instead it was just on this. It was still a successful night, but it's kind of the beginning of the end. This is right around the time that Tyson comes into WWF. This is right around the time that, obviously, according to what they're saying here publicly, Bischoff had burned out and made Kevin Nash the booker. So,
well, no, he wasn't a booker yet.
That was about to happen. That's my point. It's all around this period of time where the problems that WCW are going to have start becoming more apparent.
I wonder if Vince McMahon had ever dreamed if Nash goes down there and works for them, they'll make him the booker. He would have done like the Bill Watts Grizzly Smith deal. Grizzly Smith was booking for the opposition in Mississippi, the Culkins, and he called Watts. He said, "Can I come back?" And Watts said, "No, I'll pay you $250 a week. Just stay there and keep booking for them. You're going to put them out of business."
Well, this was interesting, and let's talk about it since you brought it up. Eric Bischoff and Kevin Nash. Kevin Nash just volunteers to be the booker, and Eric Bischoff says, "Okay."
Okay.
But Kevin Nash kind of goes into some of his philosophy on booking. Absolutes. In his eyes, or at least the way he put it here, of his booking. What did you think? Him talking about that it should always be the babyface chasing a heel champion. I mean, he seemed pretty absolute about that. What did you think of that?
We'll go through a few of these things this is at the same point where Bischoff started doing the standards and practices thing. Well, TBS wants a more family show, and old Truman Capote there, Brad Siegel, says, can they do it without being as lewd as WWE? They took it into the gutter.
Well, he ain't wrong.
Well, no, he's not wrong. But the thing is, again, at least some of the WWF lewdness made half-ass sense. They were just all over the place. But nevertheless, so Bischoff is blaming standards and practices. Nash wants to be the booker. He says, okay, go ahead. Again, sometimes the greatest player is not the guy you want to be the coach or the manager of the team, right? We've talked about this sports analogy. You know more sports than I do. And sometimes the best worker is not the best teacher, and these other similes that you can draw. But because Kevin Nash, who had been in the business at that point 8 years and had never booked or been a member of a creative team, suddenly, yeah, he's got, whether you like his ideas or not, he's got good ideas. So I'm making the booker of this company is grossing fucking $100 million a year or whatever the fuck it was. It just, and Nash, the most disinterested talking head ever. I've seen people were more excited to be put in a medically induced coma. And that's the thing, what Medusa said. Here's a quote: "Once you have the monkeys running the zoo, you're in trouble." And so Bischoff just takes off. Nash is the booker. We know that, God bless Kevin, but he's always been out for either himself or his close circle of clique friends, and he doesn't care about the company, which his statements, bore out. So the first thing he does, they've got Goldberg, who's massively over. He's one of the two biggest stars in the company. Did Hogan have that much heat or that much interest or that much? No, Goldberg is pretty much the guy, right? And he can't work a fucking lick. So instead of working around it, instead of doing what Dusty did with Nikita Koloff in 1985, 4, whatever it was, instead of having the best in-ring heels bump off of him and have the best talent in the business in the locker room in his ear trying to smart him up and tell him how to work. As Goldberg said, I don't know, there's a bunch of backstabbing cutthroats. Nobody's telling him any goddamn thing. And Nash wants to beat him because you can't have the top guy if he can't carry it. Whatever. If he's selling that many tickets, one tackle pancake with everybody. That's all you fucking needed. If you're trying to get this fucking guy over and he's a menace to society in the ring, and he's stiff and he doesn't know what he's doing, he's a mark for himself, then fuck it, find somebody else. If he's already that fucking over, as we've applied to another situation, fire the fucking writers.
Are you banging stuff?
Yes, I'm getting vehement here on the goddamn desk. So that's the point, is they beat him. They hit him with a fucking taser. I remember seeing this. They hit him with a taser and they beat him. And it buried him because he didn't know. Goldberg did not know how to take care of himself. I'm not talking about physically. It's a saying, the pros, experienced veterans, they can lose in such a way, or they can show weakness in such a way that they can get the guy over, get the opponent over, get the issue over, but they can take care of themselves. They don't come out looking bad or stupid or with their dick in the fucking mud. But a guy that green, he don't know how to take care of himself, and it just bleh. And he couldn't argue his points in the goddamn finish meetings, if they did have them, eloquently, because he didn't know the terminology and he didn't understand the psychology. He was being told things to do by people who may or may not have had his best interest at heart, such as when Nash becomes the booker and then they tase him and Nash beats him. And that's where, yes, the babyface making the chase is a classic rule of thumb in wrestling. There's more money in the chase than there is in the capture for Dusty Rhodes or Jack Briscoe or Cody Rhodes. Not for Andre the Giant or Haystacks Calhoun or no.
Not for Bruno Sammartino.
Not for Bruno. It depends not only on the individual that's chasing, but the people that are being chased. That has to fit. And Goldberg and Dusty Rhodes or Jack Briscoe and Cody Rhodes are as far apart, or Bruno. They're as far apart as night and day, but the point is, when you have a guy that's working with the people, you figure out a way to work around him rather than to try to make him conform. This was not damaging to the industry. No, the shit they were doing in other matches was a lot more damaging than Goldberg having putrid, basic fucking matches and being over like God. So anyway, you know, that nobody wanted to see Andre the Giant chase anything. Nobody wants to see the goddamn Hulk chase anything or whatever. So, and then Nash said they showed the pin where he wins, and he says, when I won, I was over as fuck. I don't care what anybody said. Yeah, he was over as fuck, and so was WCW's business. Over.
But that was part of the problem, too. The cool heel got himself over more than the biggest babyface in the company.
And that goes to where they fuck themselves in the proverbial keister. The next time they do the Georgia Dome, the Hulk and Nash with the finger poke, and Hulk winning 1, 2, 3, and Bischoff. Folks, if you don't know, we can't go into so many details on all this stupidity. If you don't know that at one time they actually built up a deal on Nitro from the Georgia Dome where the Hulk Hogan had challenged Nash for the title. It's going to be the big fucking battle of the Titans, and then boom, Hulk pokes him with a finger. He takes a big bump, and Hulk covers him 1, 2, 3. And Bischoff tried to explain this like it somehow could have been good if it had come off right. Was that the description you were getting?
I was under the impression he now accepts that it was not well thought out or it wasn't the right idea, but
he was trying to explain it somehow like it made some kind of sense, though.
Well, this was the problem then as it is now. A lot of people try to justify a lot of the things that were wrong at the time.
Well, and Nash was, it sounded like he was, it was good. Kevin Nash is a smart guy. He's had to have learned something in 25 years. It wasn't good. And then that was the night that they spoiled Raw. And I remember this because I was at the other fucking location. And the people tuned into Raw to see Mick beat Rock for the title when Shivani had spoiled the result and knocked it. And that led to the flipping of the war. This bullshit that WCW put on their television that pissed off so many of their fans again. While on the other channel, they got to see exactly what they wanted to see, which was Mick Foley win the big one. And they gave us advertising for it. And Nash, the booker's comments was, a lot of mistakes were made, but my check didn't change. There's the problem with why you don't let some of your stars get creative control or be bookers. Because they don't give a shit about you or the company or the business in general. And Conan was trying to be honest. Infighting, jealousy.
No, Conan was has been really good in the series so far.
Yeah. And he came out and said, we did ourselves no favors. Who would Bischoff listen to? And anyway, I loved hearing Bischoff talk about how they moved expenses around in the various departments at TBS to how, yes, WCW did get shorted on not being paid for television for a long time and not being paid what they would have been had there not been the relationship and all that stuff. But it was all bullshit. They benefited as much as because they were, at one point, Turner Home Entertainment was paying some of the stars at least part of their salaries. And the big money, the talent being paid ridiculous money, was being paid by Turner Broadcasting itself, not WCW. That's why nobody could afford to quit and go to the WWF when WCW was sold, because they still got paid for a year and a half. More money than Vince would pay them to work. So it was the bookkeeping in that company, along with everything else, was suspicious from the start. But anyway, here's the problem. They were drawing ridiculous money until they fucked it up because they self-destructed and all of them couldn't handle it, couldn't keep up with it. But Bischoff was spending so much money. The talent card, there were hundreds of talents under contract being paid every week. Many of them never worked. You never saw them. God, that sounds familiar with modern day, doesn't it? And they even investigated him because the story went around probably from somebody that he was pissed off at and didn't get one of the contracts, that he would get kickbacks, Bischoff, on the contracts he gave out because they were so ridiculous. But when he was cleared, they told him when he was cleared, he said, well, this made me quit being loyal to the company. What?
But not quit his job.
Well, and that's the thing. Maybe he just can't handle money, either his own or the company's. Maybe he just does spend like that. Vince McMahon was not going to pay anywhere near this amount of money for anywhere near this amount of fucking guys. It's not like he was engaging in a nip and tuck bidding war. You know, the thing with Brett, okay, that's an individual thing, and a couple of other individuals, but as a by and large, I think Scott Norton, somebody said he was making like $750,000 a year there at one point.
Yeah.
I don't know if Vince would have fucking known him if he'd have tripped over him on the sidewalk. It's just insane. So the drunken sailor spending rule was in effect. Maybe that's Eric's issue. He keeps bouncing back and forth from the brink because he just can't hang on to the cash. But back to Bret Hart. Here's a quote. They're killing me off on purpose. And so finally, he says he pulled Goldberg aside and said, I want to teach you not to hurt guys. Please don't hurt me. And I will teach you. And I can see him doing this. I can, honest to God, see him and hear him. It's telling the guy, look, I'll teach you not to But at that time, maybe Goldberg was like, because you can tell even now, he's like, well, hey, I told him watch the kick. What the fuck? What kind of kick from where? And watch the kick is be ready to take a bump when I working kick you, not watch as I kick you in the head as hard as I possibly can. Yeah, watch this, motherfucker. Boom, there you see that? If you missed it, I'll do it again. So and that's Brett's, when they showed the tape, Brett, he's starting to turn to take like a drop kick, and he's got his left hand going up, and this foot just comes in like a goddamn telephone pole on top of an 18 fucking wheeler, and bam, it blows past his hand and fucking kicks him right in the side of the head. And that's when Brett said, watch the kick. They never explained to me. I do this move where I kick guys in the head as hard as I can. And then he said, this is a quote. I wrote this down. Fuck. I somehow will myself to stand up where I'm run over by this imbecile. And he speared him and his head hits the fucking mat again. And he said it was a lousy ending for a great career. Fucking hell.
Now, Brett steals the show in every one of these things. He's so good and so honest.
Yes, and you can't dispute anything. And you can tell Goldberg's fed up with it, right? Like, I've been hearing this for 25 years. But, brother, again, polar opposites. The one person, me and Russo, Brett and Goldberg, Flair and Dusty in a working way, whatever the case, you almost can't find people that would be any farther apart in viewpoint or, whatever.
That is my favorite thing about it. I love Brett. Brett's one of my all-time favorites, and he's like the Canadian Cornette now, the way he talks about these things. But with Goldberg, it's got to the point where he's so tired of hearing about it that whenever they show him, he's like, oh, like his body's moving. You can tell he's so fed up with Bret Hart telling everyone that he's an imbecile that killed his career. Because now he's asked about it like nonstop, and Brett doesn't stop talking about it. So very, very funny.
Bill Goldberg. And in the summer '99, as they're ending this episode, Bischoff said he's frustrated, he's burned out. That was a good description of WCW's fans and viewers also. And he called it one of the worst periods of his life, and it was September 10, 1999. Schiller calls, that's what he said. Schiller calls Bischoff in and sends him home, which kind of sounds redundant. You got to come in immediately. As soon as you get in, go the fuck home. What the fuck? But Bischoff said he was confused and relieved. I can understand in some ways how he feels about that, if nothing else. And he went to Wyoming to fish. And if that's what relaxes you, go ahead. But next week, shit stain arrives. And the shit, as Gary Hart used to say, will be on, brother.
This will be the most enjoyable the Russo era of WCW has ever been, because it'll be in clip form with just people mocking it and talking about how bad it is. I'm looking forward to this.
Well, now here's another bonus to this. I've never seen most of this. Because think about this. He left in September, October, whatever it was. I had moved to Louisville in July of '99, started in OVW. And the last thing I gave a shit about once I got out of Stamford was watching WCW. It was hard enough for me to keep up with WWF at that point. I quit that, 3 or 4 years later, and started just watching our programs and OVW and WWF. So I have not seen, I've heard about most of the stupid shit that he did, but on a week-to-week basis, I've never seen this stuff.
They had a quote from him in the trailer for next week, and it was something like, I was better on camera than 80% of the roster.
I saw that in the commercial, yes. And that ranks up there with another one of his quotes when he said, well, if I can learn to work in the ring, anyone can.
He's right.
So
if he could ever learn how to work in a ring, anyone could.
Yeah, so let me just say this. It may have taken 25 years, but finally, through the miracle of wrestling documentary television, I have finally started to be vindicated as how could anybody possibly hate being in a goddamn room with another human being as much as I did with Russo? It must have been my fault, but now people can see. Now, almost overwhelmingly, the response is, no wonder. What the fuck? How could you sit and listen to this fucking moron and his drivel without wanting to grab him around the fucking throat? So I have a feeling next week we'll set some records for people putting their foot through the TV screen.
It's going to be interesting. There's 4 episodes, right? So I guess there's going to be 2 episodes.
We've done 2. There's 2 more to go. 2 and 2 is 4. Are you hanging with me on this complicated new math?
Well, I guess there's going to be a lot. There's going to be just a smaller period of time to cover in the next 2 episodes, so there may be a lot of clips and stuff. We'll be interesting. We'll see.
There's a lot more blame to go around from the end than there is from the start of the beginning. We're really going to get into the finger pointing next week, especially when Shitstain gets involved. Because he can fucking deflect and genuflect and send criticism other people's way in a fucking heartbeat.
If they want to if they really want to get some numbers, release a supercut online of just Brett and Goldberg back and forth.
Well, the one on Twitter, did you see the one that I retweeted? Somebody did it where they just clipped. It was like a minute of Bret Hart's greatest WCW experiences. It was him saying, idiots, stupid idiots, these idiots. He was an idiot. What a failure.
I didn't see it.
It's over and over. Oh, my God. But I understand that some people over this animosity and this enmity and this aggression that they are showing over who killed this company, some people have been reconciled over it. Am I seeing this correctly? That apparently now Flair and Bischoff and Russo and Jim Herd, Flair has somehow apologized for his stern words on Twitter. Well, I don't think he apologized to Herd. I think he thinks and hopes that Herd is dead because Herd's not on Twitter.
That's not what he said on Twitter.
But did he actually put Herd in that group?
Well, apparently Ric Flair was bothered by the Death of WCW show, or I called it the wrong name again. Who killed the killing of WCW?
No, it's the killing of Sister George.
Who killed WCW? And Ric Flair was not a participant. Of course, Darkside famously did an episode that Ric Flair may not have appreciated, so he was not a part of this process. But while reacting differently, in a sense, he had a very similar response to you from episode 1, or from you to episode 1.
Well, that's what I thought, because that's what I'd seen, was that he was not happy with these 3 people, the unholy triumvirate, Jim Herd, Eric Bischoff, Vince Russo. The 3 of them have the more blood on their hands. That's where last I left off with Flair.
Here's what was tweeted from the Ric Flair Twitter account. Again, it may not be him necessarily typing it out, but every first letter...
Then in that case, wouldn't someone turn the capital thing off if it wasn't him?
Apparently that's his style, but let me read this. I've tried to lay low on this, but let's face it. Who killed WCW? It's a 3-headed monster. Jim Herd, Eric Bischoff, and Vince Russo. There's no individual wrestler or faction that caused anything to kill WCW. It was the people in charge that created dysfunction, animosity, and tried to divide and conquer by lying to everyone and involving themselves in the promotion, which was the ultimate failure. God, I could give you 1,000 more examples. He's definitely dictating this to someone. I am one to live through all 3 nightmares and to be saved by WWE. Thank you to WWE for bringing someone who was dead in the water as a result of these 3 people back to life. So let's stop there.
Okay. Not only is that the way that he is felt and the way that he has spoken publicly, privately to me, publicly for the past 30 years. And that is verifiably and demonstrably not only the way Ric Flair feels, but it's also the fucking truth. He didn't tell any whoppers there. He didn't stretch any truth. He didn't make false accusations. This is not anything that many people aren't saying. This was not inflammatory in terms of, is he lying or is he working or is he what? No. That's kind of what happened. And that's pretty much what he said has been happening for 30 fucking years. So I have no problem with that tweet whatsoever.
It is interesting that two of the people that were involved in the early days both had the same exact thought, which was, even though it didn't completely die, you have to blame Jim Herd.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that was the start of it. That was, Vince had an 8-year fucking unobstructed run at doing whatever he wanted to do to the wrestling business because of Jim Herd.
Well, apparently Vince Russo did not take too kindly to what.
Hold on. I want to be clear here. I'm not saying Herd was there for 8 years. I'm saying Herd's 3-year tenure put WCW in the hole for their first 8 years. Go ahead.
We have something here. Vince Russo, who didn't like what Ric Flair had to say, tweeted out, "Looks like the Nature Boy is hitting the rum candy again. Thanks for giving me that much credit."
Rum candy?
Thanks for giving me that much credit.
Wait a minute. Back up. Let's not bury the lead. What famous Ric Flair story of public intoxication involves rum candy?
Well, there was that night in the cornfield with Ray Candy.
Oh, that's the one.
Yeah. Thanks for giving me that much credit for a writer to take down a multi-million-dollar company through words on a page.
Words on a page, bro.
I guess I really was special. Not my fault you weren't in the dock, Rick. R-I-C-K. Sorry, man. I hope you don't think my excessive use of your son David, and the rest of your family for that matter, who were great, Lord, by the way, wasn't the knife that drew the company's last blood. Yeah, I failed at laying low, too.
Yeah, he put David Flair in the ring before he'd ever had a goddamn wrestling lesson. And then after they'd done that and made him look like an idiot in front of the entire world, then fucking Vince signed him and sent him to OVW to start training. This is the way he talks also, by the way, just so you know.
Using someone and using someone well are two different things. Saying that, like, I used your family is one thing. Like you said, David Flair was used in certain ways that didn't make much sense. Ric Flair had his head shaved and was put in a mental hospital.
Yes.
So that's not good booking, and that wasn't anything any Ric Flair fan ever wanted to see.
There was a flim-flam of the Flair fans, is what it was.
Ric Flair responded to Vince Russo on Twitter, "Wow, glad you got back to me, Vince Russo. Whatever candy I'm eating, at least I can afford to eat, which I'm not sure you can. I would give you $20.
My shoes cost more than your house, brother.
I would give you $20. Or excuse $20,000, not $20. I would give you $20,000, Eric Bischoff $20,000, and Jim Herd $20,000 a piece, wired in advance to show to show up in Tampa or Atlanta. I'll rent the venue in Tampa or Atlanta. It will sell out for sure, so we can hash this out. I guarantee that I could probably sell this to a pay-per-view status because I'm Ric Flair and you're not.
Yeah, bitch.
Story of my life." He turned it into a sales pitch. What is that?
Well, besides that, okay, Herd, he's 90 whatever years old. Hopefully he's hooked up to some kind of really strong machines. They probably couldn't transport him down there, medevac him or whatever. But I know, Bischoff's interested in 20 grand with his financial history. And Russo's begging for spare change on the corner practically. So, of course, he wouldn't take my offer of 5 grand if I had a baseball bat and he just had to come pick it up. He wouldn't take that. See, that'd have been in cash. He wouldn't have to pay federal income tax or anything. But nevertheless,
but it all ends with basically,
I'm liking the way Flair's talking so far, though.
And now I think he's full of shit. It's just a huckster trying to set up a pay-per-view with another bunch of hucksters. Well, that's what it sounds like.
But then
I hate your guts. Let's talk about it, and we can both make some money. Come on, how you doing? Hey,
well,
buddy.
Yeah, but then how come the worm turned and the mood changed all of a sudden? From what I understand.
Well, Ric Flair on a Wednesday morning issued this Twitter tweet. He issued this tweet. A very important person in my life reminded me yesterday that Twitter is the weakest form of communication. I want to take this opportunity to apologize to Jim Herd, Eric Bischoff, and Vince Russo, because I really don't know. I unfairly judged you without knowing the inner workings and behind the scenes of the business.
Wait a minute. He was in the inner workings with Herd. I was standing there watching him in Herd's inner workings.
On the corporate end, with people you had to report to and work with.
In the office, they were talking to him. Both of them.
I wish on a personal note that all three of us could have worked together and had better relationships. What the fuck happened?
What the fuck is this?
Well, it goes on to blow them a little bit more here and then to say that, remind everyone that The Rock's company picked up the option to make a biography of Ric Flair, which they're working on, but a very important person in my life.
Who is that fucking spoil sport? And where is the real Ric Flair and what have you done with him? Because that's both. I want to apologize. I would like to work for all of you gentlemen. I'd like to work for all of you or work with all of you gentlemen or whatever. The baby wants to work with The Rock.
Who threatened to pull what financial rug out from under him that he all of a sudden changed course like this?
Goddamn, I would have almost fucking paid him the same thing back just not to fucking get the limber tail on these three fucking cretins that he accused of, and rightfully so, wrestling malfeasance.
You see, the good thing about Herd is Russo has never been in a fight, but he's also younger than Flair considerably. Bischoff looks a little older, but he's still younger, and he looks probably younger than he really is. Herd is old. Flair is old. I don't think anyone would have a problem with those two going at it.
But did you ever see Bischoff try to work, though?
Well, yeah, in 1998 or 90.
Oh, God, okay. Yeah. Well, no, you'd have to be a goddamn paraplegic not to be able to take him. And I mean, I guess he did the karate exhibitions and stuff, but every time he tried to work...
He's a black belt in Ninja Star Wars.
Well, there you go. And that was Velcro. No, I think anybody could fucking whip Eric. He just had people buffaloed because he had a Japanese friend and a fucking gi. Anyway, so... I'm disappointed in Rick for that last one. You know, maybe it was somebody else. Maybe he got hacked. Maybe he got hacked on the last one, because I know the first two were the way he actually fucking feels.
Who encouraged him to apologize to Jim Herd? Like, Russo and Bischoff are still active in the world of wrestling by doing different things. Jim Herd is completely out there. Or out of there, I should say.
Did he have to just feel like he had to include, or maybe somebody wrote it for him and had to include and doesn't know who Jim Herd is? Or hopefully somebody's not trying to lead Rick to Jesus or anything, where he's forgiving all of people of their sins.
Oh, here's another tweet he just put out. A very important person in my life reminded me yesterday that Twitter is the weakest form of communication. I want to take this opportunity to apologize to that poor stewardess that I chased around with my penis on the plane ride from hell.
Oh,
woo! Look at this helicopter, baby! Woo!
For heaven's sake, next thing he'll be apologizing on Twitter to the Egyptian.
All in caps. I want to apologize to the Egyptian for that $1,000 tip I gave that woman for calling you an asshole.
And I didn't mean to woo at the old blind grandmother.
I apologize to the other guy for the bathroom incident, but let's not talk about that. Woo!
Wait a minute, poop deck pappy. Remember, we're... All right.
You've gotten that name on this show in like 5 different segments so far.
Hey, I am pushing, and next is going to be olive oil, and I'm starting to get hungry. So what's happening in the world of the Arcadian Vanguard Network this week?
Another fine week of programs. Please go through all the shows, check them out, and subscribe. Of course, they're on Twitter at Superpodcast or on Facebook at facebook.com/Arcadian Vanguard. The wrestling news. Each and every day, get your wrestling news and get it for free from the Wrestling News with our morning wrestling newscast directly from thewrestlingnews.com or wherever you find your favorite podcast, Arcadian Vanguards, The Wrestling News. Want to remind everyone to go through the archives, Shut Up and Wrestle with Brian Solomon, and of course, Stick to Wrestling with John McAdam. Scott Cornish has been on both shows, great appearances, new episodes of both shows up right now, and of course, the 605 Superpodcast, The Mothership! Stay tuned because there is some stuff there's stuff we are working on right now. Scott Cornish themed special programming. Stay tuned. We're really excited to bring everyone this. Go through the archive, 605pod.com. The Mothership.
Stay tuned. There's something growing, and we may have to get some kind of disinfectant.
Ooh, you want me to tickle you again? Woo, woo.
But now we're going to go home, Brian. I'm going to take us home, baby.
All right.
We're going to talk about the main event here with a little stopover. Friday night, they didn't clash at the castle. They just talked about clashing at the castle. And then Saturday, they clashed at the castle. They had SmackDown from Glasgow, is what it is.
That's what I said last time.
Well, now you change your story.
I was on the right side of history the last time.
Well, but I'm taking Michael Cole's word for it, so that might be a mistake right there. So we still don't know for sure. But anyway, it was from Friday night. SmackDown was on Fox, was from Glasgow, the same building, and then they did the Clash the next day. And was I hearing that the Clash at the castle was the biggest gate they were ever going to do for an arena, not a stadium, but an arena event, which is breaking the record from, I guess, last month when they did the same thing, didn't they?
I did not see the scrum afterwards or the media conference or the press event, whatever they want to call it. But apparently Triple H said that they broke the record that they set previously in France.
Well, I'm telling you, that's
the secret that they haven't tapped into yet in America. Find the fans who like to sing and sell tickets to them.
Yes, and do these people, when they go to a movie, do they talk back to the screen? When they go to a concert, do they sing to the singers, or do they listen to the singers sing to them?
No, they sing to the singers. That does happen, certainly.
Well, I would shut up and let the singer sing to me if I'd have paid that much money.
What's it like? What do you think it's like being in a headlock and people are singing to you?
Well, I'm going to get into that in a second with SmackDown before we talk about the Clash at the Castle. But the thing is, they are selling ridiculous amounts of tickets in these markets at ridiculous prices to see almost nothing. And they're doing it. And the people are happy as fucking clams that they were there. That's the guy. Regardless of what you think about my opinions of what is or is not good wrestling or a great wrestling program or any of my opinions, are we safe in saying without fear of contradiction or causing controversy that this was not the best episode of SmackDown, most exciting or best in the history of the program over the past 20 years? Can we say that?
We can say that, and although a lot of episodes seem to kind of just float along, it seems that a lot of the times the episode the day before the pay-per-view or the premium live event, less goes on by far. It's usually promo heavy.
Well, yes. I understand that, but everything's already been done. You're going to buy it or you're not, or you're going to watch it or you're not, whatever. But then can we also say that Clash at the Castle was not the most exciting, greatest arena event that the WWE has ever done in the past 25 years without causing any controversy? It's not the greatest of all time, but they're setting records. People are paying more for it. They have managed to remember I said when this whole TKO, UFC, WWE giant merger, I said they're going Hollywood. The big people are running this. This is goddamn Universal Studios now. This is Disney. It's MGM. It's Monogram. Maybe not.
I don't know about that. Yeah, that's too far.
That's Tony. But that's the point is this is fucking giant. They are giving people just the bare minimum you can give them and call it a show. And these people are opening their fucking wallets and turning their pockets inside out and having a fucking ball. And I'm amazed. So on SmackDown, I hit fast forward until they got somebody that I cared about. And an hour into the program, here came Cody. And he starts doing an in-ring promo about AJ Styles, and the fans started singing to him. So he let them get it out of their system and got back on track. But then AJ and Gallows and Anderson come out. And the crowd starts singing to him too, but now nobody's listening. And Cody is supposed to ask AJ to get in the ring, and they're supposed to have this meaningful back and forth promoting this match and telling people what for. And the fans won't stop singing. And especially because now they're Dominic and AJ with the singing over it because he's the heel. And I got sick and tired of fucking trying to listen to it. And then, AJ had good material. He's Cody, you quit WWE and New Japan and Ring of Honor. You started a company and you quit that too. You can't handle pressure. But when Cody started to fucking fire back at him, they started singing over him. And I was like, so Cody told AJ off, AJ told Cody off, and they left. No blows were struck. What did I miss from not being able to fucking concentrate for the people fucking singing? And what was that song?
I don't know, and I don't know.
What language do they speak in Glasgow?
They speak English.
They do?
I believe so.
Well, then what were they saying?
I don't know what they were singing.
Well, you speak English.
But I don't know the song.
Well, you could understand
you speak
the
English.
words.
What if you speak
That's
English?
why, because I couldn't understand the words. They were coming out of their mouths, so I figured it wasn't English. And if you speak English and you couldn't understand them, it wasn't English. Was it?
I think someone needs to find a wrestler who knows these songs, because the first wrestler to start singing along on the microphone is going to be the biggest babyface ever.
Joe Hendry.
Well, he's singing his own crap, isn't he? Nice.
He can sing anything. He's a singing son of a bitch.
Yeah, but he's
that ought to be
in wrestling purgatory. He's got to get out of there first.
Well, I didn't say a lot of people were going to hear him. I said he could sing it. So then I fast forwarded. I saw somebody else I gave a shit about at 9:25 p.m. Eastern. You remember I've said before, Brian, I hate to compliment anybody, hate to praise anybody because they're going to then do something stupid publicly and make me feel bad for putting them over. Logan Paul, our boy, you see, he was on goddamn Twitter this past week swinging off a ex-president pig shit's jockstrap. And I assume...
Actually, it may be the other way around, to be honest with you.
Well, no, pig shit's using Logan Paul for the goddamn platform to spread his bullshit. But I'm pretty sure Logan Paul is one of these people that doesn't give a fuck, has no moral character whatsoever, and will put things like this, give them a platform just because it's famous people and he gets paid out of it. But that to me is like taking a kickback from the bank robbery. In a situation like this, to care more about making money than you do the world or the people in it, to give a criminal fucking con man the stage to spread more of his bullshit that these suckers already believe to some extent. It's not just TV or a work, it's serious world-shaping issues. And enough people believe this already without giving him an opportunity to poison our society further. So, hi, Logan, fuck you.
What was the segment? Well, I didn't see the segment. What was the segment on the show here?
The segment was he got home from the Tetris tournament where he got beat by a 14-year-old and L.A. Knight was in his swimming pool.
Oh, I did see this. Yes.
Yeah, and he kicked L.A. Knight out of his swimming pool, and L.A. Knight left. And then they had Solo versus Kevin Owens, and the bell rang, and they fought for 30 seconds, and they went to the floor and started bouncing each other off the desk. And Owens splashed him off the apron to the floor, and they went to the break. And I could have written those words about every other goddamn match they've ever had on this show. I didn't come back. That was SmackDown. Yeah.
All right. That was SmackDown.
Are you ready to go to the castle?
It's got to be more. Yeah, it has to be something else. Come on.
Yes. Well, no, that was SmackDown in my eyes right there. But
and by the way, there's no castle. I think the other Clash at the Castle they did, there was actually a castle there because they showed it on camera. There's no castle.
Yeah, this is downtown. They got some kebab places, but they ain't got no castle. But it was the Clash because the castles are in the country, I guess. There's castles in the country.
Is there a country without castles? I guess there are some of the smaller ones.
Many countries, many of the smaller underprivileged countries.
Is there a first world country without castles?
This is the only one I know of in the state of Kentucky, Castle Cornette.
All right.
Anyway,
well, as you can tell, we're excited to talk about the Clash at the Castle. Jim, 5 big matches.
I'm trying to talk about it if you'd let me continue. There were 3 big matches out of 5. That's what there were.
Oh, here we go.
And they started off with, obviously, Drew McIntyre, homecoming, home country hero, should go on last. How are you going to follow that? But I guess they wanted to put as much space in between the 2 world championship matches as they could, but they started the show with an I Quit match for the WWE title with Cody and AJ Styles. And, you know, again, how are you going to follow this? What the fuck? The whole crowd, the people loved it. They sang Cody's song, too. They're a singing bunch, as we said. Michelle, Cody's mom, at ringside. Biggest arena gate ever.
Suzanne watched this a little bit, too, because she was in the other room, and I had it on the TV. And I left the room for a bit and had to come back. And I said, what did I miss? She goes, oh, he started yelling at some old lady in the front row. And then I was like, some old lady in the front row? Really? He's like, oh, yeah, he acted like he was going to hit her. I'm like, really? And then I realized a little bit later it was actually his mom that she was talking about, but she didn't.
Cody, yes.
It was on mute.
Well,
It's on mute that he was going to hit some old lady in the front row.
And at least he didn't woo at her. But we'll get to that later on. But Michelle ought to stick to not trying to work either. Here's the thing. I wanted to like this match. These are Cody's the biggest babyface in the business. AJ is a fucking technical phenom. But they didn't try to replicate, as Corey Graves had referenced Magnum TA and Tully Blanchard, 1985, I Quit. They didn't try to replicate that. They tried to replicate Ian Rotten and Madman Pondo in 2008. With the tables and the chairs and the kendo sticks and the first 2 minutes they're going after a boy, boom, 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 and then Cody starts pulling out tables and setting them up. And then he threw AJ into the crowd. They fought in the audience. And then they were out in the back hallway of the building. And I'm like, now it's what we see every week on AEW, just better performed with bigger stars. And they go into a production room and start, Cody's choking him with fucking camera cables. And I'm like, fuck, I have to fast forward Cody, the first fucking match on this thing, and I fast forwarded until he got back in the goddamn ring. Because what? And we talked about in France, they got a virgin audience. They're going to love it. If you do it in front of them, they start to fucking match this hot crowd. The first thing to do is go in the back of the building. People are watching TV. They could have done that at home. Anyway, they get back in the ring, and then Cody gets a figure 4. And I'm saying, okay, now they've had a no-holds-barred fucking brawl in the goddamn production room, and they get back in the ring, and they grab a hold. They dampened my enthusiasm. But both of these guys, I mean, they did the vertical suplex spot where both of them went over the top. And then the brainbuster, AJ gave Cody on the desk, and Cody gets juice. They're great moves. They're being performed well and safely by professionals, and they're selling shit. And they're, it's as good as it can get, but it's still the same shit that everybody does every goddamn week. And that's when then, AJ yelled at Michelle and got some heat on Cody, and the crowd is, fuck you, AJ. But so much of it was on the floor. They don't need to do that. Neither one of these guys. They can work. They're exciting. They can use the ring. When AJ brought a chair in, the crowd chanted, we want tables. And that's why I wrote, the business is ruined forever by this, which I blame Heyman, the furniture craze of the 90s. It's not go babyface, please win. It's put the babyface through a table if that's the way it has to be. Because we want to see a table break. People are so mad at the furniture. AJ gets a kendo stick and hits him about 9 times. Then he gets a belt and whips him. If you've got the stick and it's already proving successful, instead of stopping hitting the guy who's not getting up to pick something else up that's less dangerous to hit him with, why don't you just continue hitting him with the thing you're hitting him with already? That's not rhetorical. Would you do that?
No, I would not. Unless I was a baby face and I was building it up theatrically to, I find different things one after another. No, I would not.
But you're following a shooting with a stabbing. I gave the motherfucker a brainbuster on the desk. Then I hit him with a kendo stick. Now I'm going to whip him with a belt. What's next? Tickle his nipples? You going backwards, aren't you?
That's true.
Fuck. So then that's when AJ stopped fighting and went to the announce desk and got a water bottle and threw it at Cody, and then went back out the other side and got a velvet bag out from under the ring and dumped out leg shackles. And he cuffed Cody's arms behind him, but they were leg shackles with the chain in the middle because Cody still needed to be able to move and had to get the arms in front of him and etc. But he cuffs his arms behind him and hits him 6 more times with the kendo stick. And now the pace is glacial. Where then AJ goes back to yell at Michelle, and she's supposed to slap him. But she goes for the first slap, and I don't know if she was like, well, that wasn't a good enough one, so she tried for a second one, but they tried 3 times, and if one just haul off and hit him would have been great. But it was like she was just pawing him. And then AJ took the chair and hit Cody a couple times and then wrapped a chain around his arm like he was Nikita Koloff and went for the forearm. And this was a beautiful spot. AJ with a chair around his arm goes for the springboard forearm. But Cody has the chair in the ring, and as AJ gets to the top rope, Cody throws the chair and beans him in the head, and AJ bounces off the rope and falls through a table on the floor. And somebody also on Twitter put cartoon sound effects to that. It was fucking hilarious. I retweeted it. But it was a great bump, and it was a great finish. But it wasn't a fucking finish. How you would get up from this thing? So then Cody crawls over and gets the key to the handcuffs and gets loose and nails AJ with the cuffs, and he gets juice now. And Cody makes a big comeback, and the people are loving it. And then Cody hits a crossroads, and then another crossroads, and then another crossroads on a chair. And by now, unfortunately, both guys' gigs have dried up because they got it too early. And, it wasn't like they were going to the bone, but at least it's a positive sign that we have blood in the new WWE. Where it's a goddamn slaughterhouse every week on TBS to the point where it means nothing, but the complete banishment of it took a lot of goddamn drama out of the big matches in the WWE. Now we've got a little soupçon of it. But nevertheless, he then handcuffed AJ to the ropes and hit him 9 times with a chair. And this is the guy who got beamed in the head with a chair and flipped off the ropes through the table on the concrete floor moments ago. And AJ's response to 9 shots with a fucking chair is screw you. So then Cody throws the metal stairs into the ring and picks him up and holds him over his head, and AJ's cowering in the corner. And then he freaks out and says, I quit. And the music plays, and Cody thinks and says, fuck it, and hits AJ with stairs anyway, and then celebrates.
What'd you think of that? What'd you think of the finish and then him hitting him with it anyway afterwards?
Well, I like that something happened, but
him giving up at the threat of being hit again, as opposed to being as opposed to screaming in the middle of a hold or something. What are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying is that it is after all the shit that had just been done to AJ, and he's up on his feet and coherent enough to scream, oh no, don't hit me with the stairs, I quit. They'd gone too far already. I like a chicken shit heel freaking out and saying I quit like that. And if this was a little bit more of a blood feud than maybe AJ Styles and Cody Rhodes' long-running 6-week rivalry may call for, yeah, I have the babyface hitting me anyway afterwards. But
he wasn't even like bloody and beaten in the corner, like, barely able to stand. It was like he was standing up.
Yes. He was like, oh shit. That's the thing. They still have a show left. They still have to do it. They've chairs and tables and lions and tigers and bears, oh my, and fighting in the back and fighting in the crowd and fighting in the ring and tables breaking and all this other stuff. And that's the first fucking match. And then the finish is, oh shit, don't hit me, I quit. After all of that, I think the people wanted to see him get hit. But then they did an angle where, as Cody was going back down the aisle, there's Solo, and they face off, and the Tongas come out and jump him. And they're 3-on-1 on Cody, because we never see AJ again. And Owens and Orton come out and save him. They have a big 6-way brawl in the aisle, and I can see that being a main event on one of these premium live events, the 6-man with the Samoans and the baby faces there, and the heels powdered off, but gee, what the fuck? And now they're about to go to a triple threat women's tag match. After that goddamn, can we not stop the same shit over and over and let the guys who are talented in the ring tell us a physical story instead of a stunt show? Just a thought. It's so redundant. What did you think?
I liked it a little better than you, but, especially the early part, it just reminded me of everything else we see. I got into it by the end of it. The finish, though, left me kind of hanging. Even though Cody hits him afterwards, which is more of a heel move than a babyface move, really.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If he had been horribly wronged for years, yeah, maybe. But anyway, go ahead.
Right. This should be like if it was Cody against Tony. Like, that would be the case. Just bam, bam, bam. Yeah. Randy, get in here. Bam, bam, bam. But yeah, I mean, and then AJ, I guess, is just dead now. I don't know what's going to happen with him. We'll see. I mean, they're setting up the big picture, I guess, as Bloodline wants the title back. Are they doing it on behalf of Roman? Are they doing it on behalf of themselves? And then Roman has to come back. So we'll see.
Did you see a very small detail, but still, I noticed when Owens and Orton came out for the save, because they weren't on the show. They didn't wrestle. I assume they weren't advertised.
Owens co-hosted the pre-show.
Okay, well, whether they mentioned, we knew Owens was here. The announcer said, we knew Owens was in the building. We didn't know about Orton.
In his trunks.
Orton comes out in his trunks and his boots, tanned, oiled, looking like he's ready to wrestle like $1 million fucking dollars. And there's Steen out there in goddamn tennis shoes and a warm-up suit. And it didn't matter whether Orton's going to wrestle or not. He goes out looking like a goddamn star. You know when that guy's around.
Although, on the other hand, should Orton have showed up in street clothes in this situation if you know he's not wrestling? Unless he wrestled a dark match that we didn't see, and I don't know what,
I don't think they had a dark match, but even no, he should have showed up and showed off the fucking goods. Goddamn, that's what he looks like. He looks like a fucking star. Why hide it? If he's going to go out and have a fight, he's going to be ready just in case, backing up his friend, the babyface.
He was manager? What is this promo you're doing here?
That's a little attention to detail that the rest of these fucking outlaw-minded jack-offs don't fucking pay attention to, and that's something else he learned from Rip Rogers. If people are going to see you on a show, go out looking like a fucking star.
Did you see that apparently they signed Hikuleo? We've seen him in AEW.
Wait a minute. Hikuleo?
Hikuleo.
No, Hikuleo. That's that song from that surfing movie. Hikuleo, baby, Hikuleo.
What surfing movie is that?
That's one of those 60s beach movies with Annette and Fabian and all those people.
No Frankie?
Frankie, Fabian, K. Fabian, Fabio, whoever those fucking people are. Hikuleo, baby. Anyway, who'd they sign?
Hikuleo, who apparently... Is he another one of Haku's?
That sounds like a disease also you'd get from too much carbonation.
Well, he's another...
I'll tell you, I had a bad case of the Hikuleos last week. Lasted for fucking hours.
Let me see exactly who and what. Hikuleo.
Is this somebody else to get in between us and Jacob Fatu?
Well, that's the thing people were wondering. He is... His family, it says that... Yes, Haku, it says, according to Wikipedia, uncle/adoptive father.
Wait a minute, he's Haku's adoptive father? What did you say?
No.
How old is this man? What are they starting a senior division? Is he going to be come in as the elder?
Haku.
King Curtis was booked?
I don't know why this got me so good. Haku's son. He is Haku's son. Haku is his uncle.
So Haku is his... Wait a minute. Uncle/adopted father? I thought that was only available in Mississippi. How is that?
But listen, he signed...
Wouldn't Haku have had to bone himself?
Listen.
How's this?
Haku, it's Jim Cornette that said that.
These family trees in Samoa, they branch everywhere like those bonsai trees. All right, so Hikuleo's coming.
Hikuleo, his brother is Tamatonga.
Oh, boy.
His cousin/adoptive brother is Tangaloa. And Bad Luck Fale, who's also in New Japan, is his adoptive cousin, it says here. And why people are talking about him, beyond his crazy family situation, the reason people are talking about him, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, is WWE just trademarked another name. And I want to say, and I'm trying to pull it up, I want to say it was Tala Tonga.
Jesus.
So people were assuming it may be him, and does it have his height? Because that's what I'm looking for here. I don't want to say 7 feet, because that may be ridiculous, but
come on.
He was really tall, but I don't remember how tall.
You know what? This reminds me of 1996. Fatu was the Sultan. Remember that? They'd done everything they could with Fatu at that point, and he hadn't become Rikishi, and, he was just in that lame gimmick. And Vince told us, I'm going to call him in and fire him. He brought him into the fucking office to fire him one day. And after the end of the meeting, all of us on the creative team got the news. Not only didn't he fire him, but he hired 3 more members of the family. Anyway, where is Jacob? Is he climbing a ladder somewhere? Jacob's ladder?
We'll see. And the Usos. Again, they're kind of in the background now. They got to pop off into this too.
Well, I was about to, they're going to pop off into this? Where did the one Uso go? I see Jay. I haven't seen Jimmy as much.
And what about the Tonga kid?
What happened to Jimmy? Did somebody hurt Jimmy?
Jimmy?
Or Jimmy? What did they do to Jimmy?
Hands off Jimmy.
Hands off Jimmy.
Don't touch Jimmy. That was on the other day. Oh my God, it holds up. That episode's so good.
All right, anyway, so they went to a triple threat women's tag team title match. Alba Fire and Isla Dawn versus Shayna Baszler and Zoe Stark versus Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair. And boy, I'm going to tell you what happened here. They had to, this is what tipped me off that Drew, spoiler, Drew wasn't going to win because they had to have one of the hometown attractions, home country attractions, win something.
Yeah, bingo.
And so they did it here. But again, placement. They won a girls' match to mean a shit after that chaos on first with the biggest stars in the company for the title. You know, even with the hometown team, that helped, obviously. But I have to think this is a short-term deal, or is potentially leading to some kind of ill will between Bianca and Jade, because Jade and Bianca give Shayna Baszler his goddamn double team thing, and it looked like a double Goldberg. But then Isla Dawn pulls Jade off and gives her kind of a German suplex and pins Shayna. So the titles changed hands without Jade and Bianca losing because of the stupid rules of their stupid three-ways. And they had to give the home country something, but was this the thing does this mess something up with Jade and Bianca, or is this where they were going? They're going to split them up anyway.
They're definitely going to split them up. And I start thinking more and more that they're starting to tease it. Now, I will say, and I was hoping you would watch this match.
Good luck with that on Father's Day after I'd spent an hour watering.
Why, I had hoped you would, because Jade Cargill, I think we need to watch what she's doing in there. And you've worked with a lot of Raw talent, a lot of people who were, monster wrestlers, bodybuilders. I think you could watch these and definitely see a little bit. I thought when she came out, my first thought was something you always say, boo-boo job face. And it turned out I was right. And,
but also,
I mean, they're hiding what she can't do right now in tag teams.
But okay, so you watched this. Did they hide it well in a women's three-way? Is this the equivalent of when the WWE put Ronda Rousey in that battle royal here some months back? And I said, what the fuck? They left her twisting in the wind. She doesn't know what the fuck she's doing, and it shows, because as she's mentioned, was a person that thought that she needed rehearsal. So why would you put Jade in this situation where it's going to be, there's always some element of something's going to come up where you got to think for yourself, even if everything's laid out. These are too awkward. That's another reason I don't watch it.
Well, that's part of the issue right there. Things are laid out because Jade, when things hit, everything looks amazing.
Yeah.
But it's clearly all things that she has rehearsed. Sequences she's rehearsed. Things, power moves she's rehearsed. And when things don't go exactly right, it shows. Anyone could slip off the ropes. That happens to anyone. I wonder how Jacob Fatu is going to do. I'm sure he'll be fine going from cables to ropes, considering some of the things he does.
I think he's probably got some experience with both, because they've got a lot of those rope type rings out in California. But I think he's also going to pay a special attention to feeling things out before he just goes out and does shit.
But I think Jade, there's still a sloppiness, and you have to remember there's an inexperience. Even though she was on AEW TV for a few years, it was the Goldberg push.
Yeah.
It's not the same thing as what they're trying to do now. But the other thing was there was a spot where Shayna choked out Jade from behind, and it went on a long time. And I almost thought Shayna was going to tap her. She did tap. They showed Jade tapping as she was being choked, and the referee didn't see it, but the commentators all started yelling it, and obviously the match kept going for a while from there. But there was a lot of awkward stuff with Jade in here.
That might have been to give Shayna something, since they were going to beat her later on or whatever. But that's, again, that's the thing is, I think in this case, her losing this early has to be more than, with the plans they've made for Jade, or that they've already shown us that they're doing, and the entrance and the build and the whole 9 yards. Even if it was a hometown team, they wouldn't have just decided we're going to take the belts off of them unless this was the start of a story with Jade and Bianca. So that's where I think they're going, and this played into it. It was a time, well, we can do it because it's right. Right? But at the same time, they're putting her in like you said, these complicated, crowded situations where she's going to have to be less green than she is now. And she got no real start in and probably wasn't dedicated to it in AEW. I mean, did we hear that she lived at Dustin Rhodes's wrestling school?
No, but
the whole time she worked in AEW.
But we did hear things like she would work before the shows with Danielson on stuff.
Well, just Whoopi Goldberg for her. Work a goddamn. I'll get in the ring before the show. I'm making a goddamn.
Well, she may have done more. I don't know.
I'm making a goddamn guaranteed 6-figure income in a business that I've had no connection to whatsoever until a billionaire decided to put me on national television. And even Jade said after she left that she got very little training compared to what she's been exposed to. But at the same time, was she knocking down doors going, I need to be in sweats doing this every day? How seriously was she taking it until she got this big offer? We don't know. But the point is, she ain't ready to be in these 3-way 6-girl who gives a fuck matches on her own.
Well,
that's my opinion.
Well, Isla and Bisla, whatever the other one's name is, they won the match. Hometown winner of the tag team championship.
Yes. And then came the Intercontinental title match between Sami Zayn and Chad Gable. And the crowd again was singing a song. I don't know what that song was either. And again,
Paul Jones would have been big over there.
I got a song I need to sing, and I'm going to sing it. I'm going to say this to both of these guys are wonderful workers. And they were doing arm drags and leapfrogs after the main event with the top star was on first with blood, furniture, and chaos. But it was a very nice match. The people liked it. And basically, they had a match in front of a long, extended angle. A model girl. She looks like she would need written instructions to find the bathroom.
Her facial reactions at ringside were, I don't know, the polar opposite of Elizabeth. I don't even know how to explain it. They were so over the top.
Well, they could bounce between scared and confused and scared.
Although I will say,
intimidated is in there.
Later on in the match, when she started selling her injury, I won't spoil anything, I thought she did a good job with that. I will say that.
Well, anyway, I also, with Gable, if he has been so misused with this talent and the promo that he can do, if they hadn't botched him so badly for so long, this is a good deal and the people are interested in it. But remember, we talked about it seems like Sammy's taking a step down from beating Gunther for the Intercontinental title to fucking trying to free the indentured servants of Chad Gable. Gable would have been more important if they had done that stupid shit with him. But nevertheless, ditch the girl here. He's doing great. She's completely useless. Anyway, they started doing an angle at the end where basically they're teasing the turn. Gable wanted the model girl to hit Sammy with the belt, but she wouldn't do it. So then Gable goes over to her and chews her out. But while he's looking over his shoulder, apparently he didn't trust her to be smart enough to give him the Iggy. Because the camera caught him, he's pointing at her and yelling, but he's looking over his shoulder like, is Sammy coming with the kick? When do I turn? And of course, then Sammy runs with the kick, but Gable moves. And then Sammy almost kicks model girl, but pulls up short, and Gable hits a German, gets a 2 count, and then he ignores the match and goes to the floor to scold the girl again. But Otis gets in between him and the girl, and Gable and Otis get nose to nose. And then as they're nose to nose on the floor, Sammy hits the ropes on the other side of the ring and dives onto both of them. But what I saw Gable move and shove Otis kind of into it. But Michael Cole said, did you see that? Otis shoved Gable out of the way and took the brunt of the dive. No, it was the exact opposite fucking thing.
That's right.
So they
Don't
told him
believe what you see with your own eyes. That's
well,
what
they
that
told
was.
him about the spot ahead of time, but I bet you he fucking wrote down in his notes the wrong way. Because anyway, so nevertheless, always watch your monitor, Michael. I taught you that when you and I did your first broadcast on television back when you were a virgin. Anyway, Gable got the ankle lock on Sammy on the floor, and Sammy rolled through, and Gable sprawled out into Model Girl's leg and clipped her as she was trying to fucking help Otis. I don't know what the fuck's going on here. And Otis got mad because the girl got hurt. And Gable drew the referee, but Otis wouldn't attack Sammy until finally he drew back like he was going to in a very stagey and awkward manner. But then Model Girl, limping and screaming about her legs, says, "No, please don't." And Otis picks Model Girl up and carries her and her hurt leg out of there, and Sammy hit the kick 1, 2, 3.
No, she climbed up to say that and then fell back down. And then Otis,
yes.
as slow as possible. Remember George Animal Steel running out of the building with Elizabeth? This was not that. As slow as he could, walked out with her, waiting for, I guess, the victory.
What this is some of the most awful, phony bullshit that I've ever seen that the crowd is fucking completely eating up. It's not, Sammy's doing fine, but like Otis, just the dumbfounded face and the stagey movements, and Model Girl, who's, as I said, emotions range from confused to bewildered, and Gable has to be, they're doing too much of it to where he has to leave his goddamn match and turn his back to yell at a girl on the floor. Nobody would actually be doing these things for real, but the people love it. Because they want to see the big fat fuck squash the little goddamn obnoxious fuck. But that was that. Did I miss anything about the fat fucks and the obnoxious fucks?
People are waiting for the Otis turn, or however you want to see it. They're waiting for it, so they'll get a big pop when it happens. And, you know, these two guys are both really good in the ring. Sammy doesn't have a great physique, but he looks like a dirty fighter. Like, he just looks like, you know what I mean? Like someone who'd be like dirty and bloody and just a mess fighting. Like, you could see him fighting. And Gable's tremendous. I really think Gable's great. I was watching this match. I thought he was fantastic here.
Remember I said Sammy is the everyman. He gets a pass on looking like shit because he can work and he can sell so good, and that's the appeal. But then you just get people that are fans of his who want to become wrestlers, and the only thing that they've copied is the looking like shit part. That's what happens with every time somebody gets over that shouldn't get over because they don't look like it or don't act like it or whatever, but they've got something special. Then we have to fucking look at that with nothing special from then on out. So speaking of nothing special, it was Bayley versus Piper. And I said, it's fucking Father's Day. 10 o'clock in the morning, I'm trying to catch up on this shit. So Bayley won with some kind of fucked up crucifix. Did I miss anything, or was this your bathroom break?
You know, I didn't see the whole thing. The only thing I did see was Chelsea Green came out there with Piper, and she got kicked out of ringside eventually, and she returned in a mask, which was the comedy part of the The comedy part of the match. The comedy part of the match in English. And, yeah.
Did she still have on that petticoat junction bustle that she wears so you could tell with the mask with the giant chiffon fucking ass on her skirt?
She was wearing the exact same thing she was wearing, I believe, when she got kicked out of ringside, just a mask.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, you never know when something like that's going to work. Anyway, now the time that we have all awaited has come. It's the main event for the other world title, the second one we've seen tonight out of 5 matches. But it's got Drew McIntyre in it. And boy, howdy, and poor old Damian Priest, goddamn, we'll talk about his trip around the world in a second. But this was, Priest is the heel So he was booed more than he's ever been in his life, probably, because not only was he the heel, but also he's against the hometown hero, who in this country would kind of be a heel. So the crowd was loud, and this benefited this match somewhat, and then they just worked their ass off the rest of the way. But I like they had the decibel meter. Did you see that for all these?
That was a great idea.
All these international shows where they're going in front of these crowds that are just going batshit insane because they never get to see this. They got to do that. But I don't know how they do if they did it in Austin, Texas. I'm not, but nevertheless, they had a good match. There was a few things that I think Priest, he's trying hard, but still, I don't know how to explain it. He hasn't come all the way out of his shell or found that last gear where you could see him in the goddamn ring in the 90s with Stone Cold, right? Which a lot of these other guys that have broken through to that upper echelon, you can with Drew, you can with Punk, you can with Cody, you can with Gunther. But work-wise in the ring with Priest, it's almost, but it's not quite. But everything that Drew does, he's the best he's ever been right now. And he moves great for a guy that size. But then Priest had Drew on the floor, and he was going to do one of those deals where he runs and he steps up on the middle rope and he cannonballs over the top and lands on Drew McIntyre. And when he Priest put his right foot on the middle rope and put his weight on it, it fucking slipped off. Those ropes, again, they're dodgy. I fucking hate them instead of cables. It could have been sweat, whatever. But when he did that, he did the version of the Hangman with his ankle instead of his neck. And everybody was freaking out about, whether he broke his leg or he tore his ankle or whatever. He flipped forward at a high rate of speed and almost went headfirst into the apron. It should have either knocked him out or broken his neck, but he was an inch off one way of doing that. And then he was tied there for a shoot, and the referee for a shoot could not untie him. Until you get back up and go back over the top rope the way you came, no human being is going to get you out of that goddamn rope. I can promise you. So that's when McIntyre realized that he was okay and he hadn't knocked his brains out or broken his leg, he started working with him again, and he helped him in a working way, bringing him over so that he could beat him to get back over the top and get him untied. Have you ever seen a bump like that in your life?
I've seen people get caught in the rope going over. I've seen people trip. But again, like you said, the way he came around and just head first, it looked like head first. It wasn't it wasn't right there. It was from the distance and got everything. But it looked like he got whiplash. It looked like he whipped his head right into the apron.
Yeah, it was miraculous that he didn't have serious head or neck damage, not the leg. The leg was, the leg was fine. The ankle wasn't going to go anywhere. It was right there in those ropes.
Well, considering he wasn't decapitated, it actually played well into the rest of the match.
Well, and he kept his ears, unlike Mick. That's the same thing. Mick did that with his neck. That's the Hangman. That's where he lost the ear.
That's what you're talking about. You couldn't get out of there. He couldn't just slip out. He slipped out. He ripped his ear off.
So anyway, and Priest shook it off, and they had their match, and they went through the big yay boo exchanges, and they did great false finishes. I won't bore everyone with enumerating him, but they had big shit that Priest did a hurricane run off the top rope, turned around into a fucking claymore. And then I got to admit, at first I was like, what the fuck? That was kind of the shits. But then I saw where they were going. When the referee was in the corner and both guys were backing into the turnbuckle and the referee dove to the floor out of the way, but he landed it kind of. Well, he took a
was an
dive.
Alfred Neely bump.
Well, he didn't even really take a bump, is that he just jumped out on purpose and acted like he twisted his goddamn ankle, right? And I'm like, what the fuck? But then, as he was trying to get back in, that's when they both lurched into the ropes and knocked him off the apron, and then he took a bump into the fucking barricade and everything, and boom, okay. So now, Drew hits the Claymore kick and covers, and the crowd is counting out loud like to 10. And then you see the long camera shot, the aisleway. There's somebody running down. It's a second referee. I see the referee shirt. And then the handheld camera at ringside. Behind the second referee, sliding in. You see his ass. You see his shirt. You see him count 1, 2, and stop. And then Drew looks up and sees who it is, and then the camera on the other side in the perfect position sees that it's CM Punk. And he's held up the count. And and the people realize it's Punk, and they see him on the screen when they're in the cheap seats. And they stand up and face off, and Drew snatches Punk and gets a huge pop. And Punk hauls off and kicks McIntyre in the balls, and the crowd goes bullshit, as Pat Patterson used to say. And then Punk gets out, and the first referee rolls in, and Priest grabs fucking McIntyre and choke slams him 1, 2, 3. This finish was worth the whole show to me. That not only brilliant, but it was shot like a fucking movie in one take in an arena in front of 20,000 people. And you could not, they didn't spoil the reveal that it was Punk, even when the count was going on. They had it framed perfectly.
Well, they had it framed perfectly for us at home. The people in the arena didn't react until the camera switched too, so they didn't even realize when the referee was running out there that it was Punk.
Well, yes, that's because in the excitement, he runs down real quick with his head down in a referee shirt and slides in, and he's got his head down, he's on his belly on the mat, and he starts counting. They're looking at the pin. And then when he holds it up, that's when they look at the referee, and then they've got the screen to back them up because they got the camera shot, and everybody sees it's fucking Punk.
Did you see the backstage footage before this?
No, I did not.
They put it on social media. It's CM Punk watching the monitor, and he sees what's happening, and he acts like, oh, I got to do something. And he sees the female referee there. He goes, quick, give me your shirt. You have an extra shirt?
Oh, I love it.
And she says, why do you need it? He goes, I can't tell you. Just give me a shirt. And he puts it on, and he runs out.
You know what? The only thing better would be if he'd have pulled her shirt off, and she was left there in her bra or pasties.
You've taken it too far. Pasties? What?
Pasties. See, think about that. If he'd have pulled the girl's referee's shirt off and she'd have been left in pasties.
Oh.
Do the kids know what pasties are?
They're not going to find out on wrestling anymore.
Look them up on the
kids,
Google
don't
machine.
Look them up on the Google machine, kids.
Kids over 16.
Okay, well, let's say 18.
If your parents aren't home.
Let's say 18 to play it safe.
Okay, kids over 18, or if your parents aren't home, any age at all will be fine. Look up pasties on the internet. But no, that's a nice little piece of attention to detail.
And then look up tasty pasties.
Well, and then look up Tempest Storm.
What are we talking about?
We were talking about
McIntyre. That's right.
Yes, Damian Priest won the match, and Drew McIntyre was left with soggy balls there in the middle of the ring, and Punk has foiled him again. And Punk found the only 3 Punk fans in the building that he could celebrate with then. And he had his T-shirt on and everything. Yeah, he's done it again. He's cost him again. That was what they had to do. But it was a perfect way to get out of it in the guy's home country. He lost nothing.
Would you agree that the next thing that happens between these two has to be Drew doing something to Punk? Punk's gotten over on him a few too many times since he's been injured.
Well, but again, it depends on exactly what Punk's physical status is, not only for when he can take bumps, but when they're going to have the match. You don't, these in and out, stick and move, hit and run, when you least expect it, I'll fucking fuck you some kind of way type of, they're keeping it fresh. But until you know the date and the place and the time of the match, I don't think you want Drew to return the favor and get too physical on Punk and do something you want to wait till you know you're going to be promoting it.
All right. Well, your idea of him ripping her shirt, it's like every one of your ideas is like out of an 80s teen movie. It's just like,
well,
just rip her shirt off and she happens to have perfect breasts.
That happened in the 70s too, I'll have you know. Not so much in the 60s. Those tits were a little droopy.
They had manners.
And in the 50s, they looked like bullets.
Well, they didn't look like bullets. The bras looked like bullets.
Well, the tits as a result, because the tits were in the bras.
Well, eventually, I guess.
A tit is like water. It expands to fill the shape of its receptacle.
What are your thoughts on the fact that Tony Storm gets to use the word tits on AEW TV? Does that blow your mind? The word tits is allowed to be used openly on wrestling?
Again, that was one of the 7, wasn't it?
Yeah. I
remember, cocksucker, motherfucker, and tits. It was the one that you ended up with. But it's not, it seems like that if you can break some norm of society or rule of broadcasting or do something that still might be considered unusual or not acceptable behavior everywhere, that you waste it on throwaway comedy shit instead of having main event people use anything in some kind of way to be serious and draw money. Or just have a fucking guy that looks like a plumber with fuck on his t-shirt on television.
Well, speaking of drawing money, it appears that CM Punk and Drew McIntyre are set to do that whenever they finally do something, and that was the pay-per-view. 5 matches. The fans seemed happy with it.
Yes, they couldn't wait on the way home. They were stopping at ATMs to get more money out to mail in to the fucking WWE to thank them. It's insane.
I want to find out how big a crowd will support how few matches. You know what I mean? Like, I want to see, can they get a building filled for 2 matches?
It depends. The right 2 matches, I bet they could. And then back in the old days, as in the early 70s, the Memphis Mid-South Coliseum could sell out on a 3-match card. I'll have you know. And they got a lot of them, too.
The problem was the promoters had too much money, so they said, all right, we need more wrestlers, more people to give money to.
But anyway, do we need more people to give us money, or have we fulfilled our commitments for this week?
I think we're good until the drive-thru, which will be an action-packed drive-thru.
Well, it certainly will, and you might not even be able to drive all the way through. You might have to wait in line for a little while, so bring a book to read, because we got a packed show on Brian's edition of the drive-thru this week. Yeah, whoop-de-doo, fat man coming down the street. Whoop-de-doo-de-doo. But until then, this formerly fat man's going to have a Papa Murphy's pizza. And you know those Irish, they know their pizza. Ah, Papa Murphy. But until the drive-thru and next week on The Experience, when we'll do something equally as interesting as what we did today. If not, you get your money back.
Money?
Until then, thank you, fuck you, bye-bye, everybody. What? They didn't pay anyway, so what are we going to refund? Bupkis?